Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto and Hinata Were Love Rivals Part 2. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Haku couldn't remember. Haku had a purpose ever since Zabuza had taken him under his wing. What was he meant to do now? If a master is no longer able to use a tool, what good is it? When Haku heard footsteps approaching, he looked up to see Sasuke approaching. In an attempt to console Haku, Sasuke sat down beside him and brought the boy's head to his shoulder. No one objected to Sasuke's behavior. Even though they had won, it was obvious that the fight was over. There was nothing to rejoice over. With his head in his hands, Naruto sat on the ground. He was afraid of how easily he lost control of himself, not of the power that filled him. Was that the chakra of the fox? It was really nice. However, I was powerless. What could have prevented me from betraying Sasuke and Hinata? Hinata felt her own barriers crumble when she saw her teammates in such a precarious situation. She knew that the strange red chakra she had seen in Naruto was the cause of her fear of the monster he had turned into. Hinata approached Naruto and put a hand on his shoulder, jolting him out of his reverie in a rare display of kindness. You're not a monster. You're Naruto Uzumaki of the Leaf and a member of Team 7. Remember that Teme? A tiny smile appeared on the corners of Naruto's lips as he began to cry. He only said, "Thank you, Hinata," because that was all that needed to be said. Kakashi was recuperating from the emotional whirlwind he had just experienced. He was relieved to find the seal intact when he got there, but he was also horrified by the unbridled power his pupil possessed. Looking at the current state of affairs, he was now bewildered and distraught. Now that Naruto was attempting to comprehend what had just transpired, Sasuke was consoling the enemy who had just lost his master. Kakashi released the breath he had been holding when he saw Hinata go to console Naruto. Kakashi decided to speak with Naruto later, so he went to Sasuke to try to get Zabuza buried and, ideally, get the child who was holding him to return to the Leaf with his team. Haku, is it? Kakashi asked, diverting Haku's focus from his grief for a moment. I know what you're going through. More than I care to tell. We'll give Zabuza a proper burial, but we need to seal him and move, so you don't get a cold from the water. Don't dishonor Zabuza's memory by making his sacrifice meaningless. Haku remained silent. He nodded silently, letting Kakashi encase Zabuza's body in a scroll. Grabbing Haku's wrist, Sasuke assisted him in standing up. A malevolent chuckle echoed through the vanishing fog, drawing the Leaf Ninja's attention. Haku remained isolated from the outside world. I knew that ninja was too pricey, but now that he's dead, I guess that problem is now taken care of. I guess I thank you for that. Now since Zabuza couldn't finish the job, I've decided to take care of it my way. Following the speech, there was a cheering of thugs. Haku's head rose slowly as the surrounding air cooled and the rain that approached him became frozen. Haku turned and started walking in Gato's direction, pausing roughly 50 feet ahead of Gato and the mob of criminals and thugs behind him. The ninja and the missing Tazuna are trapped on the bridge by another horde approaching from the opposite side. Kakashi touched Sasuke's shoulder just as he was ready to join Haku, telling his genin to leave it alone. Sasuke left Haku alone after grudgingly listening to his sensei. Oh look, it's the kid. What do you want, kid? I'm not looking for someone like you in my ranks. Although, you might make a nice whore, said Gato. The comment made by their employer made many of the thugs laugh. Haku remained silent. Rather, he put the remaining half of his mask on his face and began to make hand signals. Angry at the boy, Gato frowned. That's it, kill the ninja and those working on the bridge. Leave everyone else. With a variety of weapons in hand, the two hordes charged forward as the floodgates opened. Flash freeze jutsu. Haku slammed a hand on the ground after finishing his hand signals. Everyone but Haku's feet were encased in an inch of ice that covered the bridge. Haku was far from finished. Making the single-handed sign, Ice Saber Jutsu. With both hands, in his hands, two ice swords were forming. Haku vanished in a terrifying display of speed, tearing through the crowd in front of him while using his chakra to keep from slipping. The ground was covered in blood, which quickly turned to ice and froze. One of the two hordes of thugs was killed in a matter of minutes. Gato had hid in the back and was the only one still alive. He was making a feeble attempt to get away after breaking the ice with a club. It seemed as though Haku materialized before him, both swords crimson and blood soaked in his clothes. Please. I'll give you anything. You want money? I've got money. Just name your price and you'll have it, Gato pleaded while kneeling for his life. Haku remained quiet as his rage grew like water behind a dam. The only thing I want is your life? Haku had decapitated Gato before he could respond to defend himself. The head froze to the ground after rolling off the body. Haku finished his murderous rampage and glanced at every member of Team 7 before settling his gaze on Sasuke, his first friend. Haku collapsed backwards as exhaustion overtook him, causing the ice on the bridge to melt and the remnants of his mask to fall from his face. Sasuke was gripping his head in an attempt to numb the memories of the massacre, and Hinata puked at the sight. Naruto, still recuperating from his outburst, adopts a feeble fighting stance. When Kakashi saw his genin's condition, he realized that Naruto, like the others, was not mentally and physically prepared for battle. Naruto, take care of your teammates, get Haku, and escape. I'll stall them for as long as possible, Kakashi said, pulling out a food pill. Naruto was about to argue that he was okay and wouldn't abandon Kakashi, but the sounds made by his teammates and the expression in Kakashi's eyes cut him off. Naruto approached Hinata, rubbed her back, and tore off the sleeve of his frayed jumpsuit so she could use it to wipe her mouth. He nodded his head in comprehension. He then gave her a granola bar from his pack and his canteen of water, telling her to eat. At first, Hinata wanted to tell Naruto to shove off, but she bit her tongue because she knew he was more knowledgeable than she was at the moment and followed his instructions. Naruto turned to face Sasuke, shook his shoulder to get his attention, and then started breathing techniques to help him relax. When Naruto first arrived, Sasuke began to shake, and he was now motionless and paying attention to his breathing. Sasuke got up with Naruto's assistance and gave a feeble nod to indicate that he was all right. Sasuke was then blindfolded by Naruto after he tore off the other sleeve of his jumpsuit. Naruto got Sasuke on his back and created two clones. Hinata and Haku were present when his clones returned. Haku was carried in bridal style for expediency's sake. Like Sasuke, Hinata grudgingly supported Naruto with an arm over his shoulder because she was still feeling queasy and was unable to walk by herself. Kakashi turned back to face the army of thugs that began to charge at him as he watched his genin limp away. Kakashi felt the artificial replenishment of his chakra reserves as he popped the food pill into his mouth. He sighed and assumed a fighting stance, prepared to defend his genin with one last stand. Then, over the crowd, a young boy's voice could be heard. The army came to a halt, ready to execute the youngster who had interrupted them out of annoyance. The entire village was armed with gardening and cooking implements when the thugs turned around, and Inari was in the lead, holding a pot on his head to serve as a helmet and a crossbow plunger. You have tormented our village for the last time. It is time we took back our village. I hope you took a good look around you thugs, cause this is the last you'll see of this village. Attack. After Inari concluded his remarks, the town rushed towards the thugs. They were numerous, but they were outnumbered 3-1 by the village. When one of the less intelligent thugs cried out, "They're just villagers. What can they do?" Kakashi sliced it, cutting him off at the throat. This made the thugs realize that they would not escape alive, even if they managed to eliminate some of the villagers. The thugs began running in any direction other than toward the charging villagers as a result of the mass chaos. When Kakashi appeared in front of them with a kunai in hand, they immediately stopped running at the recuperating genin. They began tossing themselves off the bridge after finding themselves cornered, landing in massive, repetitive splashes in the water. The people we chose not to jump over the edge were either dead or on the verge of dying. Every thug that came within their reach was beaten by the villagers, who were continuously applying pressure to one side. Kakashi's main goal was to keep thugs away from his genin. He held his ground and killed anyone who approached too closely. As Inari led his village against the thugs, Hinata felt a small sense of pride in him. He was, in a sense, her soulmate, and she was pleased to see him so strong and self-assured. Inari, you are now the village hero. Second only to Haku's outburst, Sasuke and Naruto were astounded by the scene before them. It was the last thing they had anticipated happening today. The bridge was free of thugs in half an hour. At least the ones that are still alive. In front of Kakashi was a little heap of corpses. He was breathing heavily from fighting 2 battles in quick succession. He turned to the genin after grinning at the applauding villagers. Let's get some rest. I don't think we have to worry about any more thugs attacking today. With a collective nod, they all began to plod toward Tezuna's house, dreaming of tripping and falling on the guest room floor. Inari rushed up to give Hinata a hug as they passed the joyous villagers. We succeeded. Hinata smiled back as she returned the boy's hug, temporarily letting go of Naruto. You did it, Inari. You became a village hero by leading them against their adversaries. With pride in her voice, Hinata remarked, just like Kaiza. Inari's smile spread from ear to ear. I could only accomplish this because of you, Hinata. You saved me from my pain and played the role of my hero. Even though I don't know much about your mother, I am aware that you have grown up to be a hero like her. The boy smiled again and ran off to find his grandfather who had been hiding under building supplies during the fight. Hinata was shocked by Inari's words. She had always aspired to be strong like her mother, but hearing it actually be said brought tears of joy to her eyes, though she repressed them and said, "Thank you, Inari." As Hinata turned around and placed her hand on the Naruto clone's shoulder for support, the clone told him, "You know, before this mission, I thought you were just a stuck-up noble who was incapable of kindness." You know, before this mission, I thought you were just a stuck-up noble who was incapable of kindness, Naruto said, and Hinata balled her fist, ready to poof this clone out of existence at any moment. But I've found that's only partially true, Naruto added. You work hard and are kind and caring. I know we really started off on the wrong foot, and I'd like to apologize for my previous actions, Hinata said, releasing her fist slowly in surprise at the words. Hinata was perplexed by the statement, asking, what service does he owe the Hyuga? You see, when I was very young, I was being chased by some people and had been gravely hurt. You see, I actually owe your family service. Fortunately, I was taken to the hospital right away and recovered. The woman who has always been the closest thing to a mother to me is my savior. Hinata remained silent, waiting for him to explain. That woman was Hitomi Hyuga, and I have considered myself indebted to her ever since. I only knew her for 3 hours, but she changed my life so much that day. She's someone I'll never forget. When everything finally fell into place, Hinata's eyes widened. You were that boy that crashed into the park. Hinata then asked, how did you know she's my mother? And the clone nodded in agreement. Suspicious of how Naruto had connected with her, Hinata asked, well, you see, your father was kind of worried about you and asked me to protect you. Naruto's response was almost too quick to read. He grinned weakly and scratched the back of his head. He thinks I can't handle myself? Does he really think so little of me? Hinata was furious. Naruto saw her rage and tried to calm her down, saying, he didn't ask me because he thought you were helpless. He thought you'd get into trouble because you let your pride get the better of you, so he asked me. However, it seems that you have also kept that arrogant attitude for me. Did the thought of dying make you more humble? For a short time, Hinata remained silent as she accompanied Naruto on their walk to the house. I don't always behave in this manner because I believe I'm superior to other people. It's because I think it's stupid to form relationships with people who will eventually pass away and leave you behind. Naruto was perplexed by this and asked, and did you not bond with Inari? I don't take much pride in my fighting unless I know I can win, contrary to popular belief. After pondering for a moment, Hinata said, I guess I did. I will, however, make an exception for him because he experienced the same suffering as I did. Following several minutes of silence, Naruto posed the question, do you think we could become friends if I could promise you something? Hinata gave him a questioning look and said, that depends, Teme. What are you promising? Without hesitation, Naruto replied, I swear that I will never abandon you. Naruto's audacious declaration shocked Hinata, who had never heard someone speak with such conviction that she nearly thought he would keep it. And how can you guarantee that? Because I never break my word, that is my ninja way, she said, wanting to be friends with him. Naruto concluded, and after giving it some thought, Hinata replied, okay, Teme. However, don't expect me to be friendly. We are friends, not best friends. Now about that service you owe the Hyuga, Hinata said with a small smile that eventually turned into a smirk, and Naruto's sweat dropped. Wait, just because we're friends doesn't mean, he said, but Hinata interrupted him, doesn't mean what? Was it a lie when you said you never break your word? What do you want me to do? Naruto asked grudgingly after complaining about something. Oh, and I also want you to steal and destroy Kakashi-sensei's book, Hinata said, pulling it out to further tease the boy, to have me pick out a new set of clothes for you. Naruto was shocked, thinking, that's it? He almost passed out. Destroy his book? He will murder me. Knowing all too well what might happen to the boy, Hinata teased, you're the worst, you know that, Naruto said, only around you if I remember correctly, and you're the one who asked for my friendship. You better make it out alive, Hinata said. You ought to have considered what you were getting into. Naruto complained about their friendship and kept silent, hoping he wouldn't cause his former self any more problems than he had already. The clone poofed away as soon as he arrived at the house, leaving Hinata alone. Naruto had just finished putting Haku to sleep on a futon when the clone's memories came flooding back to him. After sorting them out for a few seconds, he turned around to see Hinata grinning, and this time he actually passed out, though he did so largely due to his mental exhaustion from the events of the day. Hinata laughed a little at this, finding his response to be quite amusing. Hinata lay down on her futon and closed her eyes, readying herself for a much-needed nap. The last thing she thought about before drifting off to sleep was the idea of having a friend. 1 week later, the village was completely transformed from when the Leaf Ninja first arrived, with restaurants setting up booths all over the village and local artisans bringing out their wares that they had been hiding for a few years. After Gato's forces were driven out and those who had been kidnapped returned to their homes, the village's residents began working on the bridge, and with the help of the 528 workers, the bridge was completed in record time. Technically, their mission was over, so Kakashi let his genin go have fun, hoping it would help Haku leave the house and begin to heal from what had happened. Although he had only been their enemy a week earlier, Kakashi knew that it was only a job, and he didn't hold a grudge against him. In fact, he felt sorry for the boy, knowing what it was like to be alone. He was also curious about Sasuke, who had tried to console the boy and had forgiven him, but Sasuke seemed to have never harbored resentment toward the boy and spent a lot of time trying to talk to him. After entering the house and making his way to the guest room to begin packing up his belongings, Kakashi noticed Sasuke and Haku leaving. It seemed that Sasuke had succeeded in persuading Haku to attend the festival. "That's interesting, I wonder," he said, shaking his head, and proceeded to the room, which was empty except for him. "You act like you've never been to a festival before," complained Hinata, weary of all the walking she had done, as Naruto and Hinata walked through the festival with Kakashi packing. "Well, this isn't my first festival, but it's the first one where I haven't been kicked out upon entry," Naruto said, attempting to avoid bringing Hinata into his troubles. "Why are you always hiding something, Naruto?" Hinata thought, noticing his hesitation, and mentally noted that she should ask her father about him. Naruto grabbed her by the wrist and led her to a bravery test that some of the local elders had organized for the younger generation, with some of the parents helping out as the jump scares. "Hinata, we have to do this one." The Hyuga was apprehensive, having never participated in one before due to the frightening portrayal of the activity by others, and she began to back away a little, saying, "I don't like this one." "Have you done it before? How do you know you don't like it?" Naruto asked, and Hinata looked down and said, "No." Naruto was perplexed. "If you don't try, you'll never know." At Naruto's final sentence, which was the same thing her mother used to say to her when she was younger, Hinata's head shot up. "Okay, let's try it," she said, gathering her courage. However, anything that occurs in those woods remains there. The two approached the elderly woman operating the booth and waited for their turn to enter the spooky woods. Naruto grinned and nodded, thrilled about this bravery test, which he had no idea what it was about but had heard was a lot of fun. "If you're trying to help through the festival, Sasuke, I'm afraid you're just making matters worse." Haku and Sasuke were wandering around the fair, Sasuke trying to get him to try some food or play some games, and Haku ignoring it all, feeling bad about being hired against this town and now enjoying its festivities. He had only agreed to come because the others had been bugging him about leaving the house, and he finally gave in when Sasuke asked earlier, telling him he wanted to take him somewhere. Sasuke turned back to his depressed friend and sighed. He had hoped that the fair would distract Haku from his troubles, but apparently that didn't work out. He turned to face his friend and said, "Haku, I have something to show you." Haku lifted his head slightly as he heard Sasuke's tone change to one of seriousness, and he silently followed Sasuke away from the festival and toward a hilltop. Haku saw a lump of dirt with a stick cross above it when they got to the top. "I apologize for being so crude," he said. "The day following the battle, we buried him. You didn't reply when we tried to invite you along because you were still in shock over his passing. I'm sorry." Sasuke finished standing a distance away, allowing Haku to approach the grave alone. This was exactly what Zabuza would have wanted, and he was so preoccupied with himself that he didn't even go to the funeral. Haku felt the memories of the first time he was found by Zabuza resurfacing, when Zabuza taught him how to throw senbon, make hand signs, and the first time they went on a job together. He always thought Zabuza's training was harsh, and Zabuza would always say that he needed a strong tool or no tool, but now he knew that wasn't the case. Zabuza was harsh with him because he wanted him to survive, to be able to walk out of a battle alive. "Zabuza, why did you have to leave me? Now I'm a tool without a master, I have no purpose." "I didn't know Zabuza like you did, but I think he would have wanted you to have this," Sasuke said, turning to the woods and grabbing something behind a tree as he returned a few minutes later. "I didn't know Zabuza like you did, but I think he would have wanted you to have this," he said, as his eyes widened at the sight of his master's sword. As Sasuke handed it to him, Haku felt again connected to a small part of his former master. Following a few more minutes of reminiscing and crying, Haku said, "Thank you, Sasuke." Sasuke smiled slightly and said, "No problem, Haku." The two then walked back to the house because neither of them felt like continuing the celebrations. The test of courage was both frightening and entertaining for Naruto and Hinata. At one point, Hinata heard something and hid behind Naruto, which made Naruto laugh at her antics. However, a ghost had gotten the jump on Naruto, and he leapt 13 feet into the air in fear, letting out a short but loud gasp of terror in the process. Hinata had seen the ghost hiding in the shadows and was able to contain his laughter at Naruto's reaction. Naruto landed and continued in embarrassment, grateful for Hinata's rule that whatever happens in the test of courage stays in the test of courage. Hinata and Naruto were both a bit paler than normal when they eventually emerged from the woods, and there was a lot of blackmail against the other in case one of them disobeyed the rules. "I think I've had enough of the festival, how about you, Hinata?" Still recuperating from the jump scares. Hinata nodded silently as they made their way back to the house, illuminated by the rising moon. The two remained close, still recuperating from the test of bravery, and thought the situation was quite sinister. It began with a scuttling through the leaves, followed by an owl's hoot, and the two continued to be vigilant, keeping an eye out for anything that might be hiding in the shadows. Naruto was turning when he noticed a mask partially concealed behind a tree, but it vanished as soon as he turned to face it. A few seconds later, Hinata experienced the same thing, and the two were now back to back, turning in a circle to try and spot the mask once more. Time for the big ta-da. Kakashi stifled a laugh as he saw Naruto and Hinata enter the test of courage and couldn't help but scare them himself. "You two have broken the sacred rules." Kakashi dropped to the ground and blitzed towards his genin, swiping their feet out from under them. As soon as they hit the ground, he brought himself to full height, his back to the moon to conceal the details of his attire. "Get ready for punishment." Panicked, Naruto exclaimed, What do you mean? Which our rules were broken?" With a smile, Kakashi began, "You two," before returning to his usual tone, bending down to let them see his face, and raising a finger in a reprimanding gesture. He went on, "Didn't hold hands while taking the test of courage." The fear immediately left Hinata and Naruto, and they both became angry, saying together, "You were the one doing all that?" As he nodded, Kakashi's eye turned upward into a smile. He knew that his genin would soon shake off their shock and begin chasing him, so he took off at full speed to the house. He had already set up everything to be hidden from anyone passing by and had planned to camp out on the roof tonight. Their sensei's retreat snapped the genin out of their shock, and they then took off to try and catch their teacher. The two decided to call it a night after an hour of searching. They were both physically and mentally exhausted from the last hour of searching, and when they opened the door to the house, they saw Sasuke and Haku sitting at a table playing a card game, with Zabuza's sword resting on the table next to Haku. Naruto waved absently to them both and trudged off to sleep, while Hinata did the same, but actually said hello to both of them before joining her blonde teammate for some much-needed rest. Raising an eyebrow in question, Haku turned to face Sasuke, who shrugged his shoulders and carried on with their game. The following day, as they bid farewell to Tazuna and his family, Team 7 and Haku stood in front of the recently built bridge. "Just like I promised, we'll repay once we get the money," Tazuna said. "Double the normal price?" asked Kakashi, making sure Tazuna didn't try to back out of their deal. "You betcha." After saying their goodbyes, Naruto, Sasuke, and Haku were standing apart. "Now, what are you going to do, Haku?" Haku considered the question for a moment before answering, "I don't know, I've been Zabuza's tool for the longest time," asked Naruto. When Sasuke realized that he had just cemented his friendship with Haku and was now on the verge of losing him, he was disappointed. Naruto came to his rescue by proposing, "Hey, what if you come back to the Hidden Leaf with us? After Gigi accepts you into our group, you can begin working on missions for the Hidden Leaf. We'll be able to see you more often and you'll have a purpose." "How can he be so certain about something like this?" Haku asked, surprised by how confident Naruto sounded. "I guess it couldn't hurt. Worst case scenario, I'm turned down and captured as a criminal, so I guess that's better just wandering around aimlessly," Haku said, shrugging. "I guess it couldn't hurt." Naruto began telling Baku everything about the Hidden Leaf, including the best restaurants and a detailed account of all the weaponsmiths in Konoha. Hinata purposefully said goodbye to Tazuna and Tsunami before saying goodbye to Inari. "Do you have to go, Nei-san?" asked Inari, the disappointment evident in his voice. Hinata was startled for a second by being called Nei-san, but found herself happy by it. Yes, I have to go. You'll visit, right? Inari pouted, then gave Hinata a hug and said, I have my own home and family to return to. Squeezing a little tighter at the end, Hinata said, I don't know how long I can be a hero alone. Of course I'll visit, she said with a smile. Inari grinned and gave her a final squeeze before releasing her hand and saying, Goodbye Ne-san. Hinata's smile softened as she replied, Goodbye Ototo-san. I don't know when it'll be, but I can assure you I'll see you again. So what should we name this bridge? Tazuna asked everyone before the shinobi departed. When Naruto offered his name, he was shot down right away. How about Zabuza? Suggested Sasuke, knowing Haku would have felt too guilty to suggest it. I like it. Bridge of Zabuza. Tazuna, pleased with the name and fully aware of its significance to Haku, remarked, has a nice ring to it. Well, it's settled, this will be the Zabuza Bridge, in honor of a father's love for his son, said Tazuna, smiling at Haku's reaction. Thank you, was all that was needed, and Haku began to cry. Will they actually name the bridge after Zabuza-sensei? Haku asked, looking over at Sasuke and noticing a tiny smile on the Uchiha's face. When Kakashi realized that everything was coming to an end, he made the decision to put his teenagers on the road, saying, all right, it's time to return. There were reports to complete, training to complete, and book club meetings to attend. The final task on the list caused the team's 7th generation to perspire. Once off the bridge, the quintet began to run, so to go at a more comfortable traveling pace. The trip to the land of waves was long enough, and none of them felt like spending another week traveling. Tazuna's family waved goodbye to them as they left, looking forward to seeing them again later. After 2 days when the ninja arrived at the gates of Konoha, both Sasuke and Haku were anxious about whether the Hokage would let Haku into the village, and Kakashi was only thinking about when the next club meeting was so he could catch up. Naruto was initially excited, ready to get rid of his tattered jumpsuit and enjoy some ramen, but then he remembered Hiashi's warning and shivered. Hinata was relieved to see home again, as she had been away for the past 2.5 weeks, and was eager to take a dip in the hot springs. Katetsu and Izumo welcomed them. They were among the few who did not mistreat Naruto, and they were aware of some of the abuse he endured. Being an openly gay couple was uncommon, and many people, mostly civilians, thought they were a disgrace. Who is the new girl, then? This is Haku, we picked him up along the way, Katetsu said, almost tilting his chair back. This is Haku, we picked him up along the way, Kakashi responded. Both Katetsu and Izumo were taken aback by the news, and Katetsu fell back in his chair after losing his balance. Izumo, who had begun drinking water, spat out at the news, and Haku laughed nervously, watching their reactions. As for the rest of the crew, Kakashi let out his own little chuckle. Naruto was on the ground in laughter. Sasuke was trying to contain his, and Hinata maintained a neutral expression while giggling inside. Well, we're off to the Hokage's office, see you later you two, Kakashi said, leading his group into the village. Hiruzen nodded in agreement, pleased that the younger generation would not abandon a village in such a dire circumstance. Kakashi then presented a report on the mission to the Hokage, and the new method of payment was decided upon. Hiruzen then turned to Haku and said, so I take it you're one of the assassins? Haku nodded, guilt clear on his face. Well, that does complicate things. The council will be in chaos about letting in a foreign shinobi, the old Hokage said, and Haku's head lowered as Naruto prepared to unleash his fury on Gigi. That is unless you have jutsu that you could give to the village, the Hokage concluded, fully aware that the council won't care about this boy's past as long as new jutsu is given. Haku began to nod quickly before making some one-handed signs to impress the old Hokage and saying, Flurry jutsu. Snowflakes began to form and fall from the ceiling. This display astounded Hiruzen Sarutobi, who said, you can use the ice element. Haku nodded, proud of himself, but then remembered hearing things about ninja villages putting people with Kekkei Genkai in the CRA if the Kekkei Genkai clan is too small. Fear filled his face, and Haku slowly started to back away. Getting ready to make a run for it. The old Hokage noticed this and gave a sympathetic smile. Don't worry, I banished the Clan Restoration Act long ago. Without the council making choices, you are free to love whoever you want. Despite this, Haku was relieved that he would not be forced into any arranged marriages. But you will be helping us train those who are able to use the ice element by combining water and wind, Hiruzen said, ensuring the boy understood that he would still be partially ceding his Kekkei Genkai to the village. It'll be my pleasure, sir, Haku said, barely controlling his excitement. Well, it's settled then, the Hokage said with a smile. You are now officially recognized as a Hidden Leaf Village shinobi, Haku. Now, after hearing about the developments throughout the mission, it has been bumped up to an A-rank mission. And as such you all shall be paid for it. Haku, return here tomorrow so we can test your skill. You are dismissed, stated the third Hokage. Also, take the next 2 days off. A little gift to you all, replied Kakashi. Eager to be home, or create a home, the teenagers departed. As they departed, Kakashi turned back to the Hokage and asked, when's the next meeting? After they had shut the door. This Thursday, and prepare a short story. You're up this time, the Hokage said with a smile. After bowing to the Hokage, Kakashi walked away. Gazing back at his desk and the mountains of paperwork he needed to complete, the Hokage let out a sigh. The Shadow Clone Jutsu is just for ha-has. There were 2 Sandaime Hokage clones. I've still got it, said the Hokage, grinning after taking a moment to catch his breath. Then he and his clones went to deal with the most obnoxious thing that has ever existed. Complaints from council members. While strolling through the streets of Konoha, Sasuke and Haku were surrounded by the sights and sounds of the restaurants and markets. Haku had happily accepted Sasuke's offer to take him on a tour of Konoha. By the end of it, the two were enjoying a small snack at Tenrai Dango. Sasuke asked, so what do you think of the village? It's lovely, but I don't have a place to stay tonight. Zabuza always stole the money from our missions. I'm not sure what he did with it. We only traveled for 2 nights, so I suppose I can camp in the park until I can afford a hotel. After a minute of silence, Sasuke had an idea and said, I know of a place you can stay. Where? Let's say I own a district in the village that has been unoccupied for a number of years, Haku said, doubting that anyone would allow a foreign assassin to enter their home for free. With pain concealed in his voice, Sasuke said, there are a variety of housing to choose from, and all but one have been emptied of the personal belongings of the previous owners. Haku noted this pain and made the decision to inquire later, all right, if it's okay with you. It is. Feel free to move in whenever you're ready, Sasuke yelled. Haku, intrigued by the history of the Uchiha, nodded silently and carried on eating his dango. The following day, after an hour of searching for her blonde teammate with her bodyguard, Ko, at 10 in the morning, Hinata finally recalled Naruto's fondness for a ramen shop, asking, what was it called? Ichikaku's. Observing her struggle, Ko attempted to assist, saying, Ichiraku's Hinata-sama. Yes, please bring me there. I am seeking a regular patron for the establishment, Hinata stated. With a nod, he escorted her to the ramen stand. Naruto was having trouble preparing the noodles for the ramen. Tucci had finally stood up after his tab at Ichiraku's had accumulated too much. In order for Naruto to work shifts when he wasn't on a mission, he was now teaching him the ramen way. He had only mastered the creation and kneading of the dough after 3 months of practicing the art of making noodles twice a week, if not more. He was now working on his ability to toss and twist the dough to create an extremely elastic noodle. But when he attempted to twist the dough, the dough would frequently crumble or fall to the ground. He prepared the other components of the dish or washed dishes when he wasn't practicing. He would constantly tell himself, just imagine being able to make my own amazing ramen. As he became frustrated with the noodle process, he remained in the kitchen because of this drive. Hinata observed the ramen stand's simplicity as she entered. Isn't this the best ramen stand ever? Naruto couldn't have gotten the ramen for the bell test from here. Pardon me, but do you know where one Naruto Uzumaki is? I hear he frequents this establishment? Hinata said as she approached the counter. Ayame said, oh, yeah. He's in the back. Give me a second, and then she vanished behind the curtain. Yo Naruto, you never told me about your girlfriend, replied Ayame. Her father's ears were perked up while he was making noodles for ramen bowls to come. Tucci grinned and remarked, oh, Naruto's managed to land himself a little girlfriend? Ayame cut Naruto off as he was about to deny this, his face flushed. Yeah? And she's a cute one too. You sly dog Naruto, she's my teammate. Not my girlfriend, she's just, she's the last person I date. As he washed his hands and packed his dough, his ears were flushed. After removing his apron, Naruto emerged from the kitchen to a pink-faced Hinata and a menacing Hyuga bodyguard staring at him deathly. Pale, Naruto shuffled forward to welcome his friend, teammate. Hey Hinata. What's up? Hinata heard the conversation coming from the kitchen, and it made her face slightly flushed. I came to inform you it's time to fulfill part of your service that you owe the Hyuga. Wait, you want me to destroy the book now? Naruto said, his face losing what little color it had left. What? No, the other thing. We're getting you new clothes. Now get your things so we can get this done quickly," said Hinata. With a sigh, Naruto reached for the remnants of his jumpsuit. At this, Ko raised an eyebrow. He's going shopping for clothes with Hinata-sama? Regarding Naruto, the Branch family had always kept their opinions to themselves. They understood what it was like to constantly despise and feel sorry for the boy. Regretfully, their neutrality was the extent of that sympathy. Naruto emerged from the kitchen wearing a ragged jumpsuit, the upper half of which was slung around his waist. Naruto said drearily, "All right, Hinata. Let's go buy clothes." The three of them left the stand and proceeded to a Konoha shopping area. They received a range of looks as they went down the street. Most perplexed or hostile toward Naruto. Naruto dismissed it and made an effort to divert Hinata's attention so she would begin to consider why he was receiving the looks he did. "So Hinata, how is shopping for new clothing for me a service to the Hyuga? Trust me, getting you out of that jumpsuit is a service to everyone," Hinata said, turning around. Naruto had the impression that he had just been slapped across the face. Angry that she would be so critical of his attire, he demanded, "What's wrong with my jumpsuit?" Hinata laughed, "It's obnoxious, loud, and does you more harm than good in a battle. You're a walking target out there, don't you agree, Ko?" Naruto gazed at them with hope as the branch member fell silent for a while. "Yes, it's quite flamboyant. Not fit for the battlefield," said Ko. In an attempt to dispel Naruto's desire to keep the jumpsuit, Hinata questioned, "And for day-to-day wearing?" It was strange for Ko to be asked for his opinion twice. Branch members were not typically asked for their opinions. The bodyguard paused. "It looks awful," Ko remarked. Depressed, Naruto sagged dramatically. The Hyugas concealed their amusement at Naruto's response to his lack of support. Naruto got back to his feet and surveyed the shops. "Hey, all of these stores are too expensive. These stores are known for their decent products and low prices," the Hyugas scowled. "In what way are they too costly?" This question was addressed when the two Hyugas entered the first store and the shopkeeper threatened to eject Naruto if he didn't leave. She changed her mind and apologized to Hinata but not to Naruto after letting her know that Naruto was with her. Refusing a Hyuga was a shopkeeper's financial death. The Hyuga were the most powerful clan in Konoha and had the power to ruin anyone's life. Furious with the storekeeper, Hinata walked out. It was the same at the next store. The proprietor of the third store managed to hold his tongue and avoid speaking to Naruto. For some strange reason, he thought the demon brat was with the Hyugas because he had witnessed the three of them enter and exit two stores together before. Hinata searched the store for something straightforward and dark for Naruto. Naruto was perusing more colorful and inexpensively made clothing in the clearance section. Naruto went to show Hinata the orange and black tracksuit he had pulled on. She completed it right away and informed him that she would be choosing what he would take with him when he left the store. After complaining about girls and fashion, Naruto returned to the clearance area. This perplexed Hinata, who said, "I know he can easily afford these things. He's only looking in clearance, but why?" She shook her head to clear her mind and carried on looking. After a while, she discovered a stylish black jacket and matching black shorts. In an attempt to show empathy for her teammates' affinity for orange, she chose an orange shirt featuring a red swirl on the front. In order for Naruto to try the clothes on, Hinata then went in search of him. He was wearing a bright orange shirt with a V-neck and neon green pants when she found him. The idea of him wearing that made Hinata shudder. Since Ko and Hinata were on the same page, he swiftly took the clothes from the boy's hands and put them back on the rack. Thinking he had done a good job with that outfit, Naruto scowled. After grabbing him by the shoulder and pulling him to the changing areas, Hinata shoved him into the room and threw the clothes in his hands before shutting the door. "Hinata, now change. Order." Naruto complained and followed instructions to avoid upsetting Hinata over clothes. Hinata smiled slightly as he left, indicating that she was happy with the clothes she had chosen. They hadn't seen Hinata smile in public since her mother passed away, so Ko raised an eyebrow in surprise. He appeared much more mature, Naruto had to admit, but he was aware that this stuff would be costly and that he could not afford it. However, he refrained from speaking so as not to let his friend down. The three of them undressed and proceeded to the counter. In order to avoid upsetting the two Hyugas, the cashier rang up the clothes at the regular prices. The prices were so cheap that Naruto was astounded. Did Hinata cause him to give me a discount? Oh no, I really need to take her shopping more often. I could wear a different outfit every day of the week. It's like he's never bought anything so cheap before, Hinata said, bewildered by his awe. Hinata told him to go home and change after they had finished their purchases. When Naruto requested a final day in his jumpsuit, he was immediately shot down. Naruto dropped his head and turned to leave for his home. Hinata waited for him to return by moving to a bench. What about Naruto was special enough to get Hinata-sama to smile? Ko wondered as he followed. Before Naruto returned wearing his new attire, the Hyugas waited in silence for a few minutes. Disappointed that he couldn't at least spend another day in his jumpsuit, Naruto sarcastically asked, "Are you happy now, princess?" Hinata said, "Yes, you'll be much more tolerable to be around now," as she rose from her bench seat. Naruto, not wanting his time with his new friend to end just yet, asked, "So now what? You want to get a bite to eat?" "Is he asking Hinata-sama out?" exclaimed Ko in a rage. "She only assisted you in purchasing appropriate clothing. She would never date an imp like that." When Hinata said, "Okay, but I choose the restaurant," Ko was shocked and thought, she accepted his invitation? Naruto, saddened by the likelihood that she would not select Ichiraku, asked, "Fine, what did you have in mind?" With a sly smile, Hinata left Naruto to follow her mindlessly to the restaurant of her choice. Hinata took him to the Resting Cricket, her favorite tea shop. Her mother showed her a diamond in the rough that she had discovered. Hinata cherished the store. Everyone kept to themselves, the tea was good, and it was quiet. Although he had never visited the store, Naruto had recognized it. He entered expecting the worst because he had no idea what the owners were like. Rather than being ejectedly dismissed as is customary, to Naruto's surprise, the staff merely hesitated for a moment before shrugging their shoulders and returning to their work. Naruto followed Hinata to a table and thought, "That's a first." Ko sat at a different table, allowing them some room but remaining close enough to leap to Hinata's defense if necessary. The two genin sat in silence after placing their tea order, not knowing how to strike up a discussion. When their tea arrived a few minutes later, Naruto made an effort to strike up a conversation by asking, "Sue, how's your family doing?" Although Hinata was happy to have a topic of conversation, she disliked discussing her family too much. Despite her love for them, she always felt inadequate in their presence. In their sparring sessions, Neji was far superior to her, and her sister came very close to defeating her. "They're doing well. My father and uncle have been attending to Kone business, my cousin Neji is doing incredible with his genin team. And my sister, Hanabi, is starting her second year at the academy." "Wait, your sister is the same age as Konohamaru?" blurted out after Naruto took a moment to process the information. A waiter shushed them after everyone in the store turned to stare at them for a moment, and then things resumed as usual. Hinata, who was a little embarrassed by Naruto's outburst, questioned, "Who is this Konohamaru?" Naruto controlled himself and gave an explanation. "He's a kid I've been training from time to time before team meetings. He wears a weird helmet on his head and has a scarf that's way too long for him." Hinata recalled that her sister had mentioned this boy only once or twice before. "I've heard of him, but it doesn't seem he and my sister are friendly." Although Konohamaru occasionally acted like a brat, Naruto was intrigued by this and asked, "Why do you say that?" "My sister doesn't mention him much and the times she does, it's about the stupid pranks that he pulls on the adults." Naruto thought about this for a second. Does she talk about anyone else?" "Well, I'm guessing that means one of two things." Naruto smiled as Hinata shook her head. "She either despises him, which is highly probable, or perhaps your younger sister has a thing for a certain prank-pulling, helmet-wearing boy in her class." Hinata was shocked to hear Naruto say that. "What? Do you believe this Konohamaru is the object of my 8-year-old sister's crush?" "That or she despises him," Hinata muttered, attempting to avoid upsetting the other residents. Naruto's smile expanded. "You know her better, though. Does she discuss the people she doesn't like with her family?" After giving it some thought, Hinata's eyes widened. "Okami," was all it took for Hinata to make Naruto laugh, and after his brief outburst, he said, "Okami, I can't wait to watch you freak out when Hanabi makes a move on him." Hinata actually pouted at this and remarked, "I don't like it when you're right, Teme." Naruto kept grinning. In an attempt to win Naruto back, Hinata said, "Wait a minute. You've never had a relationship in your life. What do you know about love?" At this, Naruto stumbled, saying, "Well, it's not like I haven't tried." Naruto had made multiple attempts to win a date with a girl he had a crush on, but he was consistently turned down. On those days, Sasuke would always treat him to ramen. As the memories returned, Naruto became depressed. Before Naruto reconstructed his defenses and pretended everything was okay, his silly persona momentarily collapsed, allowing the two Hyugas to see the anguish in his eyes. Naruto turned the question around and asked, "So what about you, princess? I'm guessing you've never been in a relationship either?" Hinata sighed. "You think I try to get into weak relationships with people? You're my first friend besides my family. Sorry to ask. Anyways, I'm assuming Hanabi doesn't have many friends, right?" Naruto laughed nervously at this. Aware of what Naruto might say, Hinata nodded slowly. "Well, what do you say we try to get them to be friends? Konohamaru has formed a small group of friends, and I think they'd love to be friends with her." Hinata nodded her head. "They'll be fake. She's the younger sister of the Hyuga heiress. No one will see her for who she is. No, my white-eyed friend." Naruto shook his finger at this. "You see," Hinata said, narrowing her eyes at Naruto, "Konohamaru's last name is Sarutobi. He's the grandson of the Hokage and knows what it's like to deal with fake friends. Believe me, his group won't view your sister as a means of gaining popularity." When Hinata learned that Konohamaru was the Hokage's grandson, her narrowed eyes widened. "How does he know the Hokage's grandson?" Hinata asked. As Hinata gave it more thought, she began to feel more comfortable with the prospect of attempting to make friends with both her sister and him. At least Hanabi will have a friend in the end if the other two prove to be fakes. Fine, but no romance. I can handle her being friends with him, but I won't tolerate you trying to get my 8-year-old sister into a romantic relationship with this boy. Of course, was Naruto's understanding nod. It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon when Naruto noticed a clock on the side of the tea shop. He didn't want to be late because he had scheduled a meeting with Sasuke and Haku for 1:30. "As much fun as spending time with you as Hinata. I have to go. I made plans with Sasuke to meet up soon. I hope I'm not being rude." "It's okay, I have to get home soon anyhow," said Hinata, shaking her head. "Thank you, Hinata. You don't know much today meant to me," Naruto said as he got to his feet and turned back to face her. As she watched him leave the store, leaving her alone with her thoughts and an empty teacup, Hinata arched an eyebrow. Ko was stunned. He could see their expressions, but he had not heard much of what they were saying. Hinata's facial expressions, specifically. Nobody had ever witnessed Hinata's face display so many different emotions in public. It was like watching a whale perform a ballet when she smiled and pouted. Normally, she maintained a neutral expression, only occasionally breaking it to display annoyance, disgust, or even a hint of anger. Incredibly so, Ko was interested in Naruto Uzumaki as well. Hinata had been able to express these feelings to him, and he momentarily displayed a heart-piercing pain. "I understand that he is the odd man out, but how much abuse does he endure?" News didn't spread quickly or within the clan unless devious means were used because the Hyugas were a private people and gossip was frowned upon. He didn't have many chances to learn the village gossip because he was a bodyguard and only left the compound when Hinata left her during his brief free time when she was on a mission or training with her team. What is the boy concealing? Curious and wary of Naruto, he thought. In front of the Uchiha compound, Naruto discovered Sasuke and Haku. Sasuke asked, "When did you start wearing decently looking clothing?" and raised an eyebrow at him. Naruto grumbled, "Why does everyone think the jumpsuit looked awful?" Haku laughed, and this, "Not you too," made Naruto's face drop. After dismissing it, Naruto made the decision to start talking, asking, "So what did you have planned, Sasuke?" "Well, Haku went to the Hokage's monument earlier and now has a lot of free time in the afternoon. So I was thinking about going around to get some decorations for his new place along with some groceries," replied Sasuke. "Okay. I don't know much about home decor, but I do know about groceries," Naruto nodded in response. After that, the three traveled to one of Konoha's numerous shopping areas. Haku was able to get a more thorough tour of the local shopping district for when he does have money, even though they didn't purchase much. The whole time, Naruto felt strange. As if he had simply followed along with Haku and Sasuke the entire time. It made him uneasy, but he wasn't upset about it. Naruto gave Haku a tour of his small grocery store before claiming he had to leave because he had work at Ichiraku's to do. As Naruto jumped off, Sasuke and Haku waved goodbye. That was strange. Perhaps Hinata will be aware. But I don't think so. Hold on, Ayame-chan may be aware. Naruto changed his route from his apartment to Ichiraku's in order to speak with his big sister about the peculiar circumstance he had just found himself in. "When did you start making good fashion choices? Oh wait. Did you and that cute Hyuga girl go on a shopping date?" Ayame asked Naruto as he entered Ichiraku's. Ignoring Ayame's girlfriend's jab, Naruto said, I loved that jumpsuit, anyways, as his head dropped and a tear ran out. Ayame-chan. I have a question, since Naruto didn't typically come for assistance. Ayame was now curious. Is it about that Hyuga girl? Oh my. Ayame, please allow it to be about her thoughts. I was just with my friends Sasuke and Haku, and we went shopping for some home decor for Haku's new house. Well, after a little while of walking around, I started to feel like I was intruding on something. Like I was a spectator, who was invading their privacy. I don't know how to explain it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Ayame, who was well aware of what Naruto was discussing, laughed when she heard this news. I think the expression you're thinking of is being a third wheel. If what you said is true, then it seems that Sasuke has a little crush on this Haku person, and I think Haku might have one on Sasuke as well. The words, WHAATT, left Naruto speechless. He believed that gay people were just like everyone else, with different romantic tastes, so he had no problem with them. However, the possibility that Sasuke would be gay had never even occurred to him. His mind suddenly flashed back to the academy, where Sasuke refused to even look at the girls who were flinging themselves at him. Nothing about romantically liking a girl sprang to mind when Naruto tried to recall all the times Sasuke had mentioned them. Everything fell into place, so it's no surprise that his fan club has never had an impact on him. With them, he bats for the opposing team. Ayame's concerns about Naruto were beginning to grow. He had been quiet for a full minute, taking it all in. Is it truly that significant? Sasuke is infatuated with a girl. It's not as if he will abandon you. Naruto, are you still in there? Ayame asked, snapping her fingers in front of Naruto's face. Yeah, I'm here. I also think I could use a bowl of ramen. That was a lot to process, Naruto said, shaking his head to get out of his reverie. Was it that big of a deal? So he likes someone. He's not going to leave you because he has a crush, Ayame said, giving him a doubtful look before heading to get his usual. Ayame inquired about Haku while he was eating his ramen. She protected him even though she wasn't as close to him as she was to Naruto. She inquired about Haku's character and his likes and dislikes. How long has it been since Sasuke and Haku first met? Unknowingly avoiding the subject of Haku's gender, Naruto provided her with answers to all of her questions. Naruto paid, finished his ramen, and began to walk away. Thanks Ayame-chan. You were a lot of help. Things make a lot more sense now. I'll have to introduce you to Haku sometime. He'd love this place, Naruto said, turning around and raising a flap with an arm. Naruto then departed, leaving Ayame in shock. Is Haku a man? She got a nosebleed when she thought about yaoi. After a few more seconds of standing there in disbelief, she noticed the nosebleed and went to treat it before it got her into trouble. Bonus chapter. A newcomer to Perv Wars wearing inexpensive black jumpsuits, similar to Guy and Lee's jumpsuits, and bandanas worn as masks. Naruto and Konohamaru were hiding in a tree outside one of the numerous buildings that would house the members of the Icha Icha series book club. Since many of their members were elite ninjas, the operation was very challenging. Okay Konohamaru, we don't have much time, so we're going to have to act fast. Once the paint bombs are in place, get out of there. Got it? You got it boss, responded Konohamaru. Naruto gave Konohamaru and himself an equal share of the paper bombs. It was customary to prank a full-on meeting as one's first task as part of the anti-perv rebellion. Naturally, Naruto invented these customs on the fly to make his practical jokes seem more hip. It was much more difficult because Sasuke was unable to accompany them, but he managed to get by and hoped Konohamaru would learn anything from their training sessions. The two boys leapt to the house's roof from the tree. There was a open window for airflow there that was about to be their entree and escape route. The window led to the laundry room. The two used mirrors to look around the corner to see the members of the ICHA book club. The members dressed in cloaks as if it was a cult, and they were all sitting around a table discussing various parts from the book series. At the head of the table sat two people who wore masks to hide their face. One was a mask of a monkey, the other a dog, with an empty chair in between them. Whispering, Naruto explained. The two people wearing masks are the most powerful. Although we have never seen anyone occupy that seat, we assume that the center seat is for the aforementioned leader. You go set your bombs now. After finishing, Naruto began to move stealthily around the room, keeping low and blending in further with the henge jutsu. And remember, if things go south, run. After a few weeks of practice, Naruto taught Konohamaru the henge jutsu, which he had modified to function more like a cloak that would essentially make one invisible, and the two were now using all of their hard work. Something went wrong as Naruto set off the final paint bomb. Konohamaru had failed to shut out the book club members' conversation and was so embarrassed when he finally processed what they were discussing that he stumbled and struck a side table leg, causing the Icha club members to freeze and stare at the table while Konohamaru began to perspire. Not wanting to risk Konohamaru turning pervert, Naruto gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, we were so close. I could leave him and E-scale, but then they might turn him to the perv side." With a sigh, Naruto cancelled the henge and stood tall, saying, "Run." Smoke from Sexy Harem Jutsu quickly filled the room and disappeared, leaving each member with a stunning image of a woman. Naruto followed closely behind Konohamaru as he fled. When they arrived at the window, Naruto helped Konohamaru get away before turning around to see that some of the group had recovered and destroyed the clones. Naruto exclaimed, "I'll stall them. Run!" Reaching out a hand for Naruto to grasp, Konohamaru yelled, "I'm not leaving without you." To Konohamaru's surprise, Naruto yelled, "No. The rebellion now resides with you and Sasuke. You must not be caught tonight. That's an order." Konohamaru nodded reluctantly and took off at full speed. Naruto spun around and detonated the paint bombs, splattering orange paint all over the members in the house. Then, in an attempt to buy Konohamaru some time and protect him from the horrible fate of becoming a pervert, Naruto charged forward. On the training field, Team 7 stood before their sensei. Kakashi had stated that today would be a training day and that they should arrive by 7 o'clock. The genin, of course, did not arrive until 8:30. Upon his arrival, Kakashi immediately began the training without even offering an explanation for his tardiness. Today will be a training day, more specifically working on individual skills. Hinata, I want you to work on your chakra control and reserves by sparring with me on top of the river. Naruto, you'll be practicing your lightning element and then working on a lower level lightning jutsu. Sasuke, Naruto is going to put his weight seal on you and then you're going to be doing laps around Konoha. Kakashi said with a grin. Naruto giggled a little, Hinata grinned, and Sasuke's eyes widened at his task. You know what, put the weight seal on Hinata too, Naruto. When Sasuke's turn came, Hinata's smirk and all of her laughter vanished from her eyes. Doubting their utility, Hinata questioned, Sensei, how effective are these seals anyways? I'm glad you asked. I've been curious myself about the amount of progress one can make with them. Naruto, I understand you've been using one for the past few months. Please show us how well they've worked. Oh, and tell the amount of weight you started with compared to what you're using now. Kakashi wanted to see how much Naruto had changed after using weights, even though he was well aware of how beneficial they are for speed. Without hesitation, Naruto left to show that he hadn't turned off the seal very often during missions or training, and when he did, he wasn't able to test the limits of his speed. Feeling as though a building had just been lifted off his back, Naruto made a one-handed ram hand sign in front of his teammates and sensei before removing the chakra from the seal. Okay, so I started with about 130-something pounds. Then, as time went on I increased it. I'm at about 250 pounds right now. Next, Kakashi gave Sasuke and Hinata instructions to grab a bell and protect it from Naruto's attempted theft. With a nod, the genin prepared the exercise. Kakashi said, "Begin," when he saw they were prepared. Sasuke and Hinata both used their dojutsu as Naruto disappeared. In spite of her Byakugan being active, Hinata failed to see Naruto. But Sasuke was astounded by what he was witnessing. Before Hinata could even move to defend herself, Naruto had flashed behind her and taken her bell. He was now approaching at breakneck speed. Sasuke attempted to interact with him but was only able to observe as Naruto effortlessly removed the bell from his kunai holder because his body was much slower than his brain. Then, with two bells in hand, Naruto emerged where he had begun, flanked by an eager Uchiha to his right and a stunned Hyuga to his left. Well, Hinata, it seems to be very effective. Now Naruto, put those on Sasuke and Hinata and explain how they work. Then go practice this lightning jutsu, Kakashi said, throwing a scroll at Naruto as he gave him a brief clap at his speed. Naruto turned around and placed the seals on his teammates before explaining that Sasuke began by putting on 120 pounds, while Hinata put on 85 in order to avoid suffering too much damage during the sparring. We stopped training at 12, so no breaks, Kakashi said with a smile. Ah, but Kakashi-sensei, grumbled Naruto, dissatisfied that he would have to perform the same jutsu for 3 hours. Kakashi asked menacingly, what was that, Naruto? Naruto fell silent as he recalled the predicament he was in and the prank he had attempted a week earlier. With a tone of authority, Kakashi said, Good, now get training. The three of them went to their separate tasks after the genin complied. When noon finally arrived, Sasuke and Hinata were worn out. Using the pretext that he needed to check on the other two as a kind of rest, Kakashi had used a couple shadow clones and called on Naruto's clones a few times during his battle with Hinata. The jutsu, known as static charge, paralyzed an opponent by sending a cloud of electricity, but Naruto found it more challenging than he had expected. Following his initial attempts, Naruto discovered that if he wished to be able to move after 3 hours, clones would be required to learn the jutsu. Naruto began experimenting after mastering the jutsu and remembered some information one of his clones had read about jutsu's fusion. With this information, Naruto created what he called a static clone, which, when detonated, would burst into the paralyzing electrical cloud. Kakashi was impressed by Naruto's speedy completion and modification of the jutsu, even though many people didn't think Naruto would ever comprehend the complexity of jutsu creation and modification. As he turned to face his genin, Kakashi said, "Now that training is over, we're meeting up with a few other genin teams for joint training," adding, "So get ready to leave in another 30 minutes, they'll be meeting up about now as a bet on whose team is better." He flat out plans to be late to things. The genin asked, sweating. After that, Kakashi went to read his book while perched on a tree branch. With a sigh, Naruto located a pleasant patch of grass to lie down on. When Sasuke finally joined him, Hinata was left to find something to do with her time. She decided that it would be beneficial for her to take a short break after sparring for so long, so she chose to sit with her back to a tree and nap. Field of Training 17. A new Chunin was Kurenai Yuhi. She had faced a genin team after only a few missions. After her promotion, a lot had changed, but her crush on Asuma Sarutobi remained the same for the previous 7 years. Granted, she had no trouble joking and conversing with him, but only when there were other people present. When she was by herself with him, she became agitated and began to stumble over her words. She was fortunate to have a similar crush on Asuma Sarutobi, but it didn't begin until he returned to the village following the 12 Guardian Ninjas' fallout. She was the first person he met when he went to lunch with Kakashi and Anko. He quickly discovered that she wasn't just another attractive woman who turned into a ninja in order to marry into a wealthy clan. He continued to see her after the meeting, and as he witnessed more and more of her reassuring and powerful personality, he fell in love with her. "Where is that lazy bum?" Kurenai said, glancing down the path to the training field. "Known Kakashi. He'll probably be turning up in another 30 to 60 minutes, Asuma said with a laugh. "Why hasn't he been let go yet?" Kurenai thought. She nodded, pinching her nose, and left the road to go check on her genin. Shino Abuame, Kiba Inuzuka, and Sakura Haruno made up her team. Although Shino and Kiba got along well, Sakura was constantly comparing the boys to Sasuke Uchiha because she was obsessed with him. This was something that always irritated Kiba, and eventually Shino began to show signs of annoyance as well, which surprised Kurenai when she first noticed it. Her team had completed a number of D and C rank missions during the previous 3 months. It wasn't anything drastic, but it provided her genin with much needed combat experience. Although they haven't killed yet, Kurenai would be the first to do so. At the moment, Sakura and Ino were conversing, most likely about their crush on Sasuke or something associated with him. She could read Shikamaru's lips as he used the word troublesome, but Kiba and Shino were with Asuma's 2 boys and they were discussing who knew what. With a sigh, she turned around and sat down beside Asuma while they waited for their fellow Chunin. Her cheeks were lightly flushed and powdered. It was 1:14 when Kakashi arrived. Kakashi grinned when Kurenai and a few of the genin, Sakura, Ino, and Kiba, asked him where he had been. "We got lost on the road of life," was what Hinata said in his place, grinning at the sight of her fellow genin's annoyance. "I've never heard a worse excuse," exclaimed everyone except Asuma, who was sweating. As he walked over to join Asuma, Kakashi smiled and said, "So we're here, let not waste time. Kurenai, would you explain to the genin why we're here?" Before gathering herself and turning to face the group of teenagers in front of her, Kurenai had a tick mark appear on her head. "Alright, so today we're going to be playing a game of capture the flag. Each team will be given a flag to protect. The goal is to have 2 flags by the time 3 hours is up. You may choose where to place your flag and that will be your home base of sorts. Needless to say, there will be no killing or injuring of any serious degree. You have 10 minutes to find a place for your flag. After that, Asuma will send a firework jutsu into the sky to start. Any questions? No, you cannot team with people from other genin teams. Anyone else?" Kurenai sighed, pinching her nose as Sakura and Ino raised their hands in unison. "Will we be able to take off any weights or chakra suppressors we have put on?" asked Naruto, holding up his hand. After everyone arched an eyebrow, Sasuke and Hinata exchanged glances and asked, when did he put on chakra suppressors? This confused Kurenai, who said, I guess you can, since genin typically didn't use such training gear so early in their ninja careers. Excited to have no limitations on his training, Naruto leapt with delight. Kurenai sent each genin team off with a flag and set the timer after noticing that no one had any more questions. After that, she joined her fellow Chunin instructors for a seat. Kurenai questioned Kakashi, what crazy training are you putting your genin through? He laughed and said, believe it or not, I only started Sasuke and Hinata off with weights today. Naruto has been using his own restrictions. I only found out just now he's also using chakra suppressors as well. When Asuma and Kurenai saw how far ahead the alleged dead last was in comparison to their genin, their eyes widened. Kakashi chose to go a step further after noticing their astonishment, saying, oh yeah, he also makes the weight seals himself. The other two Chunin were shocked because they had never heard of a genin using fuinjutsu. And after years of practice, the few people in the village who can use it can only create the smaller seals. Kakashi continued the casual act without responding to their laughter. Kurenai said, hey Kurenai, could you set up the viewing illusions? I'm curious as to where everyone placed their flag. Kurenai snapped out of her reverie, nodded, and cast the third-person jutsu, viewing illusion, which was a jutsu she had made herself. It functioned by connecting with a tag she had placed on each team to provide a third-person view of the team. 3 distinct oval mirrors appeared, and each genin team was shown alongside a reflection. The plan was for Sasuke to guard the flag with 2 clones while Hinata and Naruto went to steal the other flags, with a clone going to henge into Hinata to further confuse the other teams. Team 7 had chosen a spot by the river to place their flag because the brushes provided hiding places when defending, and the water was too shallow to swim under, so anyone coming from that direction would be in the open. The 3 of them then waited for the firework to begin the game. Naruto, how much chakra have you been suppressing and how long have you been suppressing it? Hinata inquired, curious about her blonde teammate. Well, ever since the Weeb mission where I went berserk, I decided to research ways to prevent that from happening, Naruto said, laughing nervously. I chose to investigate a seal that suppresses chakras. The firework went up just as Hinata was about to ask another question, thinking, well, it works and I've suppressed about half my chakra. There's no middle ground in his training, is there? As he vanished beneath his henge, Naruto said, let's go. Okay Hinata, since there's not enough time to teach you the jutsu you're going to have to, Naruto swallowed, realizing the next part of his sentence, hold my hand. Hinata raised an eyebrow in skepticism, saying, I know it's weird, but it's the only way for me to cover you as well, before Hinata activated her Byakugan and took his hand, joining him in his invisibility. Naruto shook his head to clear his mind and followed, attempting to ignore how soft Hinata's hand felt in his. Let's get going before the others steal our flag Teme, Hinata said, drawing him to the closer of the 2 flags. As he stood guard of the team flag, the clones Naruto had left earlier came out of the bushes they were hiding in and joined Sasuke, who gave a little laugh at his teammates, finding it amusing to see his friend become a little agitated. When they were about 200 yards from their target, Naruto and Hinata had to slow down because they didn't want to be heard. It's Sakura, and the flag is all wavy, same with that small cave over there, Hinata said, pointing to a small cave that had some brush in it but no flag. Must be genjutsu, Naruto said. Well done you two, but I'm afraid this is as far as you'll get, Hinata and Naruto said, turning to see Orochimaru and Kiba on a tree branch behind them. You may be invisible, but we don't need to see to find people, do we? Orochimaru? Before leaping at Naruto and Hinata, prepared for battle, the tiny puppy gave a little yap of agreement. Hinata commanded, sprinting in the direction of the cave, Naruto, stall Kiba while I get the flag, we'll retreat after that. Naruto could only utter the words, bring it on, before Kiba began to assault him. Fang over fang. 2 blurs that resembled tornadoes sped in Naruto's direction. Naruto acted quickly and leapt just before they could touch him. Naruto turned to look behind him and saw a tree that had fallen because of 2 large holes that were now going through it. It would be better if I didn't let him hit me with that. Naruto had an idea when he heard Kiba getting ready for another attack. What if I can get him to wear the weight seal? After he gave each of the 5 clones a weight seal tag and used Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto and his clones readied themselves for their counterattack. Fang over fang, he exclaimed as 2 tornadoes rushed in his direction. Waiting for the ideal moment, Naruto remained motionless. His clones were waiting for the signal while hiding in the trees. Naruto was swapped out for a nearby boulder when the tornadoes were a yard away. Kiba and Ikumaru were exposed when the two tornadoes collided with the boulder and ceased to rotate. The two were then jumped on by the clones, who applied enough weight seals to make them struggle to move but not in pain. I guess you guys lose this competition, Naruto said, grinning at Kiba as he emerged from the trees. We still got Shino, and he'll take you all down, yelled Kiba, frowning. Hinata landed beside Naruto with the flag before he or one of his clones could respond. Enough chit-chat, let's get back quickly so we can get the other flag. She then leapt to a tree branch to await his arrival. Waiting for the smoke to clear, Naruto added, Shadow Clone Jutsu, spread out so Kiba can't track us. With a nod, his clones fled in all directions. After that, Naruto handed Hinata his jacket, saying, put this on, if he can detect your scent, the clones will be useless. Hinata nodded grudgingly and put on Naruto's coat, then took his hand as he put on the invisibility henge and they set off for their base. Hey Hinata, how was your battle with Sakura? Naruto asked as they were traveling. She was incredibly pitiful. She doesn't seem to be very good at anything other than using genjutsu to conceal the flag. It must be her obsession with Sasuke that's hindered her growth, Naruto thought, nodding to let Hinata know he had heard her. The flag was exactly where they had left it when they got there. Hey guys. Did you get the flag? Said Sasuke as he turned to face them. Naruto showed Sasuke the flag while smiling and nodding. Sasuke. Where are the clones? Hinata asked after noticing something. They decided to do a little patrolling and haven't gotten back yet. Naruto's and Hinata's eyes narrowed. When Hinata activated her Byakugan, she noticed that Ino and Shikamaru had replaced their flag with a henge on a stick and were hiding behind the tree in which they had hidden it. Found them, Hinata said, gesturing to the tree. Naruto vanished after releasing his weight seals. After saying, wait, don't go back there, Sasuke passed out, after hearing a troublesome coming from the opposite side of the tree. Naruto appeared with his two clones, Shikamaru and Ino following him. Smart isn't destroying my clones, but you really ought to have replaced them, Ino promptly corrected them, saying, hey, we had clones, but some bugs destroyed them. After that, there was not enough time to swap them out. After that, Naruto and Hinata tied the two up. Sasuke began to awaken by the time they were finished. Huh? Sasuke-kun. Are you okay? Yelled Ino in a high-pitched voice. Sasuke ignored her and got to his feet, looking around to get his bearings again. What happened? I thought you would have put up more of a fight, Naruto said. Shikamaru was able to use shadow possession while Ino invaded my head because your clones became foolish and diverted my attention. As he joined his teammates, Sasuke clarified, after that, I don't know. So what? The other team is still out there, while Choji is holding our flag. Sasuke nodded in understanding, then tried to think of a plan to get the other flags. It was still early in the game, so they had time. In an attempt to ignore Ino's dramatic and annoying praise of Sasuke, Naruto and Hinata joined him in thinking of a plan to get the other two flags. Actually, Kiba and Sakura are taken care of, now it's just Shino and Choji, Naruto corrected, proud of himself and Hinata for defeated the majority of the other team together. Things don't look to be in favor, better get your wallets ready, said Kakashi, grinning at his fellow Chunin. Asuma sighed in disappointment. His team had a good plan, but it was poorly executed. Kurenai scowled at Kiba and Sakura's poor performance. Kakashi was proud of Naruto and Hinata and had laughed at the awkward situations they found themselves in. Kakashi, don't get ahead of yourself, Kurenai said. You still have 2 hours to get the flags, Shino, you can do this. She knew that Shino was intelligent and dangerous if not taken seriously, and she meant every word she said about him potentially changing the tides. She had just substituted Choji for Asuma, and she had no idea how skilled he was, but based on what she saw in the mirrors, he wasn't much of a threat. Shino, who was currently following Choji to his team's flag after watching Team 10 defeat Sasuke and take the flag, had placed a female Kakaichu beetle on Choji as he was getting ready to take the flag away. Shino knew that his team's flag would be taken early in the game, so he devised a plan to allow his team to recover later. When Shino reached the base, he hid in the shadows and, after spotting Team 10's flag, he moved to cut Choji's neck, hoping that Choji would be rendered unconscious. Unfortunately for Shino, Choji's plump figure prevented the chop from applying enough pressure to the nerve, so Choji jumped forward at the chop and turned to face Shino, asking, "How did you get here?" Shino responded in a monotone, "I put a female on you before you left Team 7's base, then I followed." "Well, that's how it is. Please don't be angry," Choji said, before he exclaimed, "Body expansion jutsu." With his tiny arms and legs protruding like a dressed-up meatball, he sucked his head and limbs in and began rolling toward Shino at high speeds, destroying all the shrubbery in his path. Shino leapt out of the way of the meatball of destruction and then let go of his beetles. Choji took 2 steps toward Shino with his fist out before collapsing on the ground, unconscious, after running into a large tree and deflating out of his meatball form, creating a fatal opening for the genin, who clung to Choji and began eating away at his chakra. Shino quietly made his way to his team's base, careful not to be followed, after walking over to the flags and grabbing them. He then sent his beetles to fly around him to let him know if anyone was hiding nearby. "Hopefully Kiba and Sakura can recover in time so we can form a stronger defense," Shino said. "Hey, Kakashi, take that." Asuma's head was lowered in admiration of his genin's performance, and Kurenai exclaimed, "Don't get ahead of yourself, Kurenai. My whole team is still out there." Kakashi was impressed with Shino, but he knew the boy wouldn't last long against his team, so he parodied what Kurenai had said to him earlier by saying, "Don't underestimate my genin." As Shino was eliminating Choji. "Wait," thought Naruto, "so Choji and Shino are the only ones left? Hinata, could you quickly scan the area with your Byakugan?" His teammates nodded, wondering if he had forgotten that he had brought that fact up earlier. "Nothing unusual, just us in the forest," Hinata said, raising an eyebrow at the odd request. "Indeed, it indicates that Shino is not present and has no intention of coming here to steal our flag. He would have already tried if that was what he wanted to do. Shino must have gone to the base of Team 10 to retrieve their flag." After a brief pause to allow his teammates to catch up, Naruto continued, "Shino probably won with his beetles and has both flags. And since Choji has ours, they probably ran into each other and fought. He will now return to his base to keep them safe until the end of time. We can take the 2 other flags for ourselves if we can intercept him." Naruto shocked everyone, so much so that Ino remarked, "When did you actually get smart, Naruto?" Naruto looked at her and said, "What are you saying, Hinata had taken this opportunity to take off Naruto's jacket and use it to muffle him. Seeing Naruto stop ranting and putting on the jacket, her eyes lit up. "Wait. When did Naruto and Hinata start dating? We're not together, idiot. We used his jacket to throw off Kiba and I returned it to him upon realizing we no longer need his stench to hide my scent from Kiba. I guess she's still the cold Hinata from the academy even though we're friends. Why am I the one suffering the most because of her comments?" Hinata said, turning to face Team Aid's base, saying, "Let's get going, now that we have a plan. Let's start the plan before it no longer works." She then leapt into the trees, leaving Sasuke and a slightly dejected Naruto behind her. No one realized that the Hyuga heiress had a tint of pink dusting her cheeks, the result of Ino's assumption just now showing. "Are they on to me? It could be Hinata and her team, if so she's already seen me. I'm going to have to deal with them eventually," Shino said, halfway to his team's base when his insects warned him of a presence approaching from the northeast. Shino then gave the order for some beetles to locate and gradually drain the chakra of whoever was pursuing him, and the beetles flew off without hesitation, and Shino accelerated his race back to his team. It took a few minutes for Hinata to actually locate Shino, and after that, they made sure he was returning to his base and changed their current course to cut him off before he reached his destination. Team 7 was traveling with their captured flag, and Naruto created some more clones to go back and protect their captives while he and Sasuke followed Hinata. As they got closer, Sasuke and Hinata began to feel sleepy, and the team gave up trying to figure out why. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and saw that Hinata's legs and his own arms and legs had beetles, but when he turned to face Naruto, he was shocked to see that he was naked. "Shino sent his beetles on us, they're on our exposed skin," he said. "Your legs, Hinata, and mine are on my arms and legs. Since Naruto is wearing none, it appears that they don't like him." "Why can't I see them with my Byakugan?" asked Hinata, perplexed. "Maybe they're too small for your Byakugan. Maybe if you try focusing on one directly you'll be able to recognize them easier," said Naruto. Hinata pointed her Byakugan at one of the insects and said, "There you are, you little pests. I guess it wouldn't hurt." She expanded her field of vision and discovered that, despite all the other bugs on and around them, she could still see the bug. After removing the beetles, Hinata turned around and headed in Shino's direction. "She could have at least told me if it worked or not," Naruto said, sagging. Once more, he and Sasuke followed, but this time Hinata moved in zigzags to stay clear of beetles' clumps. Shino was waiting for them when they finally caught up to him. "Hello, Team 7. I've been expecting you." With both flags in hand, Shino stood atop a tree branch. His expression was obscured by his glasses and high collar. Hinata yelled, "Everyone jump," and her teammates were startled. A swarm of beetles soared beneath them as they bounded into the air. Hinata turned to Naruto as they touched down and said, "Take him in taijutsu and deactivate your weight seal." After giving a nod, Naruto quickly turned to Shino. Astonished by Naruto's unexpected speed, Shino attempted to find him before colliding with him with a fist to his left. Shino exploded into a swarm of bugs as the fist made contact. "Oh my Kami! Did I just kill Shino?" "No!" exclaimed Naruto in horror. His ability to predict the locations of the two flags with very little evidence and his inability to detect substitutions caused Sasuke and Hinata to perspire. Hinata yelled, "Hey Baka!" Shino substituted himself and is making a beeline for his base. Snap out of it and start chasing, after realizing that Shino must be sprinting back to his team. When Naruto saw how stupid Hinata was, he looked up at him and began to ball his fist. "He used his bugs as a stand-in to trick me, Shino, you're in for it now." Shadow, clone. Jutsu was the final hand sign Naruto made after releasing his chakra restraints. Hundreds of clones were left behind as smoke filled the forest surrounding him. Sasuke and Hinata were shocked by their teammates' display of chakra reserves when Naruto said, "You better be ready, Shino. Because I'm making sure Team 7 wins after that stunt." The Narutos then turned into a blur of blacks, oranges, and blondes as they raced to Team 8's base. The sight of Naruto's enormous reserves of chakra left all three Chunin speechless. Asuma's cigarette had fallen from his mouth and was now beginning to singe in his vest. He smelled burning fabric, so he quickly removed it to smother it with his foot. Since Kurenai was a new Chunin, she decided to ask her veteran Chunin if they had ever seen someone with that level of chakra. Asuma shook his head, and Kakashi replied, "It was when I was an Anbu. Can't tell you unfortunately." He then turned back to the mirrors, wondering, is that the power of a Jinchuriki? Terrified by the raw power Naruto possessed at just 13. Shino had just returned to base when Naruto caught up to him, his clones completely encircling Team 8. Kiba and Sakura's eyes were bulging at the sight of it, and Shino had both eyebrows up in surprise, an unusual display of emotion from him. Naruto grinned sardonically and said, "End of the line." "Those flags belong to me," Shino said, to Naruto's dismay and the surprise of his teammates. "What? You won't engage in combat?" Naruto cried out. "Yes, we would unavoidably lose given the number of clones in the area." Shino's monotone voice said, "This way we avoid injury." The Narutos sagged, and one went to retrieve the flags and give them to the original. Naruto left 100 clones behind and took the rest to find his team. After he met up with Sasuke and Hinata, he sent a squad to find Choji and took the rest to guard the base to ensure that no one could try anything amusing without his knowledge. The Chunin called back the genin after 3 hours had passed, and Naruto was the first to arrive, catching 2 pouches and putting them in his pocket before his fellow genin showed up a few seconds later. Kurenai then called the genins together and said, "Well done, everyone. Kakashi will now go over the rationale for this exercise." Kakashi glared at Kurenai as Asuma laughed, saying, "Yes, we did this exercise today to see if you were prepared for the Chunin exam. We all think you're ready to take the exam, except for a few spots that need polishing." The genin, well, most of them, cheered at this. Shikamaru complained that the exam was difficult. Sasuke smiled slightly and Hinata smirked, and Shino just nodded his head. For the rest, Choji gave Naruto and Kiba a one-armed hug, nearly breaking their ribcage in the process, while Ino and Sakura grabbed each other's elbows and were jumping for joy while letting out high-pitched squeals of delight. The Chunin grinned at their genin's reactions. Asuma made the decision to assist Kurenai in retaliating against Kakashi, and a sly smile appeared on his face. "Kakashi will be treating all of you to Yakiniku-Kyu as a celebration. Isn't that correct, Kakashi?" Kakashi sent a death glare at Asuma, promising pain later. Through gritted teeth Kakashi said, "Why yes, Asuma." Kurenai was barely able to contain her laughter when Kakashi shoved his hands in his pockets and stalked off, saying, "Go home and clean up, and then meet at Yakiniku-Kyu's at 5, and don't be late." Fortunately, Asuma told the genin that they could go home now and prepare, and the genin left quickly, causing Kurenai to burst into a fit of laughter. Asuma grinned and began laughing as well, little realizing the embarrassment Kakashi would cause him and Kurenai in the weeks that followed. Getting out of Yakiniku-Kyu's in order to avoid upsetting the elders, who were always interfering in people's affairs and were so stiff and stale, Hinata and her bodyguard left the restaurant much earlier than anyone else. When they discovered that Hinata had adopted the Jukin fighting style, they moved to banish her from the clan, but thankfully her father stopped them and let her show how much more powerful she was with the modification. The elders then reluctantly dropped the movement to banish her after Hinata demonstrated her growth with the new style. A certain blonde baka ran towards Hinata and yelled at her to stop, interrupting her as she was thinking about how annoying the elders were. "What do you want, baka?" Hinata said. "I got to get home soon." Ko was interested in Naruto's opinion because, ever since the shopping trip, he had been snooping on the boy like an older brother who is wary of his younger sister's boyfriend. Naruto took a moment to catch his breath before responding. "Hinata, since tomorrow is a day off, would you like to arrange a meeting between Konohamaru and Hanabi? Now he's meddling with Hanabi-sama? What is he playing at?" Ko raised an eyebrow and squinted at this. Hinata had been so busy that she had neglected to plan anything with Naruto, which is why she had forgotten about Konohamaru. "Oh yeah. Hanabi and I don't seem to have any plans for tomorrow. If not, I'll take her to your house so we can go look for that Konohamaru child." Naruto grinned and said, "Excellent, but are you even aware of my residence?" Ko used this opportunity to assist Hinata. "I know your address, Uzumaki-san. I can take Hinata-sama and Hanabi-sama to your lodgings." Hinata arched an eyebrow at Ko, wondering how he knew Naruto's residence. Naruto grinned even more broadly, saying, "That's great, I hope to see you then. I request that Konohamaru clear his schedule for tomorrow." After giving each other a nod of agreement, the two genin left, both of them relishing the idea of getting together again tomorrow. After explaining the plan for tomorrow, Naruto went in search of Konohamaru and said, "Konohamaru, are you free tomorrow? I have someone I want you to meet." "They must be cool people if the boss wants me to meet them." Konohamaru cheerfully accepted. Excited for what was to happen tomorrow, Naruto grinned and sprinted off. Naruto didn't realize Hinata would notice all the graffiti on the walls leading to his apartment until he arrived there later that evening. "If she sees this, she'll get suspicious of me," he said, barely managing to make friends with Hinata. He became so alarmed by this that he went to the paint store he often visited to get some paint to hide everything. He found cigarettes, broken bottles, and leftover drugs from local dealers on the ground when he got back. He created some clones to assist in cleaning up the mess as his panic worsened. Satisfied with their work, he and his clones entered the apartment after finishing. That is, until they became aware of how disorganized the apartment was. Naruto and his clones hurried to tidy up everything once more. Naruto ultimately concluded that he could simply use the justification of kunai practice, even though they would be able to replace the broken windows in time. After finishing his cleaning, Naruto put on his pajamas and spelled out all of his clones. He collapsed onto the bed and slept, sorting the memories from the clones. At first, Hanabi's sister was perplexed when Hinata asked if she wanted to meet her friend. The young Hyuga was surprised to hear her sister mention visiting a friend, as Hinata had never before considered anyone to be a friend. Hanabi, however, agreed and was thrilled to meet her sister's friend. "I wonder who it could be." The two went to bed after getting their father's blessing. With what little she knew about Hinata's class, Hanabi tried to think of who it might be, but no one caught her attention as someone her sister would genuinely get along with. The Hyuga sisters went to Naruto's apartment the following morning with their bodyguards. Since it was around 8 in the morning, few customers were out and about and the stores were still opening. Hanabi grew increasingly interested in her sister's friend as they approached their destination. Does her friend not even belong to a clan? Who exactly is this individual? Ko was shocked to see that the stairs had been cleaned and all of the graffiti on the wall had been painted over when they arrived at the apartment building. He cleaned up. It must have been in order to prepare Hanabi-sama and Hinata-sama. Hinata approached and knocked 3 times as they got to the door. They could hear movement inside while they awaited admission. Naruto was half asleep, wearing a sleeping cap, and massaging one eye when the door was opened. Reactions were mixed among the Hyugas in attendance. Although Hinata wasn't shocked, she was quietly disappointed that her friend wasn't a little more put together. "This is the person who was able to actually befriend my sister?" Hanabi asked, doubting the boy in front of her. The two bodyguards were dubious of the boy in front of them and were a little repulsed by his casual clothing. All of this, though, was hidden by their expressionless faces. After a few seconds, Naruto turned around and exclaimed, "Oh, Hinata. You're here," after realizing who it was. Then he blushed slightly as he glanced down at his pajamas. He said, "Sorry about this. I'll be back in a few seconds," while scratching the back of his head. Then he unlocked his weight seal and shut the door. He changed, brushed his teeth, and took one last look around the house before opening the door again in the 7 seconds. Sorry about that, come in, make yourself at home. I'm just going to make some breakfast if you would like any. I was planning on making pancakes. The eyes of the Hyuga bodyguards widened. They enjoyed certain liberties because they were not members of the main family. One of them was the freedom to interact with others without constantly seeking permission from the elders. A visiting food stand from the west made it possible for one lucky Hyuga branch member to discover pancakes. They praised the floppy circle of dough as they made their way back to the compound. After that day, practically every branch member went to get one, and the pancake has become a branch family favorite ever since. However, the strange food Naruto mentioned perplexed Hinata and Hanabi. It was a meal they had never heard of. The Hyugas entered the apartment and were taken aback by its small size. At the moment, they were standing in the dining room, kitchen, and living room. A small hallway with a storage closet on one side and a bathroom door on the other led to the bedroom. There was a little flower garden visible on the window sill. Although Hinata recognized the flowers, she was unable to recall where she had seen them. Naruto remarked, "Those are my gladiolas. I've been selling any surplus I grow to the Yamanakas. Would you like one? You said you do flower pressing, right? Maybe you could press one of those." After noticing her interest in the flowers. He can't remember anything on a test, but he remembers that. Surprised Hinata a little. "I didn't bring it up until we started working together. I'd be happy to take one, but later, I don't want it to dry up before I press it," Hinata said after gathering her thoughts. With a nod, Naruto faced the kitchen, taking different ingredients out of the refrigerator and pantry. Their bodyguards took the small couch, while Hinata and Hanabi sat at the small table. Naruto discussed the academy with Hanabi while he was cooking. At the academy, she was now in her second year. Hanabi grew fonder of Naruto the more they conversed. He stood out from the rest of them. He was just being kind. He didn't give a damn about her status. He finished the first 2 pancakes, then placed each on a separate plate and drizzled with maple syrup. After that, one was given to each Hyuga sister. Naruto said, "I hope you like them. I know they're not exactly fancy, but they're really good," before going back to work creating more. The 2 sisters exchanged doubtful glances. Together, they cut off a piece with their forks and then bit into it. Both sisters' eyes widened, and they suddenly felt hungry again. Knowing that the 2 sisters had discovered their new favorite food, the bodyguards grinned. Naruto turned around after finishing 6 more pancakes to see the 2 Hyuga sisters glaring at him. He reluctantly placed another pancake on each of their plates after shedding a few drops of perspiration. Then he surprised branch Hyugas by giving each of the bodyguards a pancake. When a major family member was present, they were typically ignored completely, so it was even more unexpected when the demon child of the leaf gave them such a treat. Naruto returned to the table to eat his own 2 pancakes after grinning at the 2. He had added some vanilla extract, chocolate chips, and blueberries. Just enough to create a delectable flavor combination with the chocolate and blueberry. "Uzumaki-san, where did you learn to make these?" Ko asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. The other Hyugas turned to Naruto for clarification because they were unable to prepare pancakes at the compound because no one had been able to obtain the recipe. It was a gift from Kami to find someone who could create such quality ones. Then he replied, "I've been sending clones to the library to gather information about jutsu and other helpful or interesting things. Last month, I found a new book on baking recipes and found the recipe, along with a variety of others. Fortunately, I planned on going to the library later. We will have to check out this book and try it for ourselves," Hinata said, acknowledging that the Hyuga needed this recipe. The other Hyugas immediately caught her off guard and remained silent, even though she had never intended to visit the library. After several minutes, there was a knock on the door. Knowing that Konohamaru was most likely on the other side, Naruto asked Hanabi to get the door while he was cleaning up the plates. Let's see how they respond when they see each other. When Hanabi opened the door, he saw a young boy wearing a head helmet and an overly long scarf. Konohamaru said, "Hi Hanabi," as he froze upon seeing Hanabi, trying not to enrage her. Then she shut the door right away. "That was harsh," Naruto said, his perspiration falling. Before returning to her seat, Hanabi remarked, "Uzumaki-san, you have a short monkey at your door." On the opposite side, Konohamaru could be heard shouting that he wasn't a monkey. According to Naruto, that short monkey is supposed to be here, and he laughed weakly. Naruto pondered, what did he do to anger Hanabi so much, as he opened the door for Konohamaru. Hanabi and Konohamaru appeared to be engaged in a glaring argument as they sat at the little table across from each other. Naruto decided it was time to move this party out of his tiny apartment in an attempt to diffuse the tension. "How about we go for a walk in the park? In an effort to ease their tension, Hinata concurred with him. A flower was then cut for Hinata and sealed in Naruto's wrist. Hanabi and Konohamaru were separated by Hinata and Naruto on their way to the park. In an attempt to avoid getting caught in the crossfire between the two 9-year-olds, the bodyguards followed closely behind. They arrived at the park and began to walk in uncomfortable silence along one of the park's many paths. So, Hanabi. Out of curiosity, what did Konohamaru do to get you so mad at him? Naruto thankfully broke the silence. This is a bit much, but I knew she was upset with him. Hanabi paused to collect herself as Konohamaru pulled his scarf across his face. That idiot decided it would be funny to prank the teacher by transforming into a nude, and very, developed woman. Hinata's murderous intent burst forth from her, frightening the nearby birds and a few people. With a drop of perspiration, Naruto hoped she would show mercy to Konohamaru. I wonder where he could have learned such a jutsu, Naruto, Hinata said, turning to face Naruto. I might not be around tomorrow, so forget about Konohamaru. In a panic, Naruto prayed that Hinata would spare his life. Hanabi observed her sister's response, perplexed as to why, given that Konohamaru was at fault, she was angry with Naruto. I admit I did that, but he was a pervert. Also, she's complaining about me when she was the one who hid mousetraps on my desk and chair. I'm still finding mousetraps from 2 weeks ago. My fingers can't take much more of it. Konohamaru then made the decision to open his obnoxious mouth. After that, Konohamaru raised his bandaged fingers. That's because I refill your desk regularly, Hanabi muttered, barely audible to Naruto. Hanabi turned away, whistling, as Hinata gave her sister a fierce look. Naruto squeezed his nose and let out a loud sigh. Naruto glanced at Hinata and said, okay. So you both have done damage to the other, I get it. Trust me, recalling the times they had pushed each other up the walls. So I have an idea, how about we have a little competition? Naruto had achieved his goal of capturing everyone's attention. In this competition, it'd be 2 teams. The goal of the game is to defeat the other team's flag bearer. The flag bearer can't fight at all, so you only need to restrain them, not beat them senseless. The other team member can fight however, but if they go down their flag bearer has no protection. Whoever gets the other flag first wins. How does that sound? Hanabi pondered for a few seconds before asking, can it be boys versus girls? Naruto said, yes, with a smile. At this, Hanabi's face was displaying an evil grin. Konohamaru was in a panic, and Hinata displayed a slightly surprised expression. Naruto led the way and said, if everyone is on board, let's head to one of the training fields. With a range of emotions, the other members of the group followed. Are you sure this is a good idea? Hanabi wants to tear him to shreds and quite possibly could do so, Hinata said as she hurried to join him. Naruto laughed and replied, oh, this is a terrible idea. But I'm hoping if they see each other's skill they start to respect each other for their skill, and maybe we can do joint training sessions to help. I'm just making it up as I go, but I hope this works, otherwise their relationship is just going to become worse. I really think they could be friends. Nodding, Hinata hoped her friend's plan would succeed. The Hyuga sisters were opposed to the pranksters because the teams had been divided. In order to protect the sisters from harm and because they wanted to know Naruto's strategy, the bodyguards were serving as referees. Both of them were aware that Hanabi and Konohamaru would engage in vicious combat, but they couldn't see how this would improve the situation. The only person Naruto had told about his plan was Hinata, who appeared reluctant to accept it. In order to slow them down sufficiently for Konohamaru or Hanabi to catch them, Naruto had given the flags to himself and Hinata and then placed weight seals on both of them. Naruto and Konohamaru turned to face the opposite side of the clearing after donning the seals and handing Hinata a piece of cloth to use as a flag. Okay, so after a minute to hide or run in the forest, Konohamaru and Hanabi can attack the other team. 1, 2, 3, go. Each team had a referee as they ran into the woods. Naruto halted Konohamaru after a few seconds of running in the hopes that his strategy would be successful. Okay, so Konohamaru, I'm pretty sure Hanabi hasn't unlocked her Byakugan yet, so if you use the invisibility henge you'll be able to sneak past her or strike from the shadows. Now if this doesn't work, stay with long-range attacks. You don't stand a chances up close. Konohamaru nodded and said, okay boss, paying attention to what Naruto had to say but primarily preparing a strategy to beat Hanabi. Until the minute was up, the two kept jumping around the forest. Knowing that Hanabi would probably be doing the same, Konohamaru set out to find her after that. As he raced through the trees, he put on the invisibility henge and used another jutsu to silence himself. After a few seconds of waiting, Naruto said, "Follow me," turning to face the referee who had followed them. Using a tracking seal that Naruto had found a week or two prior, the two silently followed Konohamaru. Hanabi sped off to locate Konohamaru as soon as the minute was up, ignoring her sister's cautions as well. The words, "This plan better work, Naruto," came out of Hinata's mouth as she watched her sister bolt off. Hinata nodded as she turned to face Ko. With their Byakugan, the two trailed Hanabi, keeping a safe distance to avoid detection. Although Hanabi had not yet unlocked her Byakugan, she was still aware of Konohamaru's general path. She was scurrying to locate her target among the tree branches. She abruptly halted, paying attention to her sixth sense, and became extremely aware of her surroundings. Hanabi was knocked to the ground when she felt a fist strike her cheek. She noticed Konohamaru, who had a smirk on his sulky little monkey face, as she fell. From where did he originate? He just showed up. He was gone by the time Hanabi landed and turned to face Konohamaru. What? He's not that quick. What happened to him? In order to find out where her opponent was, Hanabi trained her senses to try to see, hear, and sense anything while in the Juken fighting stance. Now who's so powerful? Konohamaru choked back a laugh. He enjoyed watching Hanabi's surprise when he punched her, even though he knew Naruto was right to keep his distance. He was briefly revealed to her because he and Naruto were still unable to use taijutsu while putting on the invisibility henge, but to him, that only made it better. Hanabi was now directly in front of Konohamaru. As she was thrown back a few feet, Hanabi coughed and felt a kick to her stomach. Once more, as she stood up, she saw Konohamaru materialize in front of her and then vanish. How does he vanish? His clan isn't known for this, and it wasn't taught to us in the academy. In any case, he always seems to show up when he attacks me. Therefore, all I have to do is resist his next blow and then strike him to stop him from vanishing. Hanabi assumed her fighting stance once more, anticipating Konohamaru's next move. After hitting Konohamaru for the fourth time without making any headway, Hanabi pushed herself to stand and assumed the stance again, wiping the blood from her lip. Byakugan would make this so much easier. With his subsequent blow, Konohamaru became arrogant, and Hanabi quickly took advantage of his error. Half a second before he made contact, he had cancelled the invisibility henge, allowing Hanabi to see his fist coming toward her face. But he had misjudged her speed and paid a heavy price for it. After narrowly avoiding the fist, Hanabi attacked the boy with a flurry of chakra-infused blows, striking his muscles and depleting his power. Even though Konohamaru barely managed to jump back and avoid the beating, the damage was already done. With his arms already bruised from Hanabi's blows, Konohamaru was gasping for air. God-awful. The two stared at one another, both in the same state. Hanabi had several bruises, a few scrapes, and a broken lip. Konohamaru's arms resembled a black, blue, and purple painting by Jackson Pollock. And that didn't even include the bruises beneath his shirt. Under Naruto's invisibility henge in a nearby tree, Hinata, Naruto, and the two bodyguards observed. In order to prevent Hanabi or Konohamaru from hearing their gasps and flinching, Naruto also had to activate the silence jutsu. Well, I didn't really know what was going to happen in the first place, so this isn't exactly what I had anticipated happening. Hinata's expression was worried. She had never witnessed her sister's pain so intensely. She really wanted to put an end to the fighting, but she was aware that doing so might never ease the tension between Hanabi and Konohamaru. As she watched Hanabi get struck by Konohamaru, she could see that the bodyguards were having difficulty adhering to her order to stay out of the way. "I guess you're not too bad of a fighter, monkey butt," replied Hanabi. "Yeah, perhaps you shouldn't have underestimated my abilities," Konohamaru grinned. Infuriating Konohamaru, Hanabi yelled, "If I remember correctly, it was your underestimation of me that put your arms in such a state." He began making hand signals as he struggled to bring his hands together. He was about to make the final sign when Hanabi moved to stop him. Fire ring. Naruto stopped the jutsu and emerged in front of Konohamaru. The others found Naruto's severe expression to be quite unnerving. They had never seen the boy so furious with someone. The sight shook even Hinata, who had seen him in the fog. After realizing his error, Konohamaru hung his head in embarrassment. "I apologize, boss. I was just caught up in the moment and..." Konohamaru gave up defending himself after realizing that his actions were unacceptable. Hanabi was intrigued and perplexed by the whole exchange. To what extent was that jutsu dangerous? And how was he aware of how to do it? Hanabi exclaimed, "Hey! What are you doing here? I thought you were supposed to be hiding," after attempting to guess what the jutsu might be. Resolving his guilt, Konohamaru joined his former adversary. "Yeah, why are you here, boss?" Naruto exclaimed. Wanted to see the fight, yeah," as he became aware of the trouble he was in. The two gave him a doubtful look. At his awful justification, the Hyuga in the tree started to perspire. Konohamaru had moved to stand beside Hanabi, equally displeased, and Hanabi had crossed her arms. With a sigh, Naruto conceded. "Fine. Yes, I followed Konohamaru to see you two fight to make sure you two didn't hurt one another really bad. And I was hoping you two would see how good the other was and become friends," keeping his weight seal off in case he needed to make a quick escape. Naruto watched for their response. Hinata was waiting, holding her breath. Why would you tell that fool to them? Not wanting to give away that she was also there, she waited in silence. To make a decision, Hanabi and Konohamaru had turned away from everyone else and toward one another. "I don't like this," Konohamaru mentioned. The statement, "It was quite insensitive of them to try and force us into a friendship," was readily accepted by Hanabi. The two glared at Naruto while nodding. "I don't like him butting in on my personal life, but I don't want him to be sad," Konohamaru said, putting his head back in their pocket of secrecy. Hanabi remembered the tasty pancakes from earlier and turned to look at Naruto again. She turned around and concurred with Konohamaru's assertion. She responded by saying, "How about we train together and that's it? I admit you have some helpful jutsu. And I know my taijutsu is better than yours, so this could be mutually beneficial." Upon observing his perplexity, she clarified that, "It means we both gain something from it." Konohamaru gave a sympathetic nod. Naruto began pleading with Kami that they hadn't chosen to rip him apart as they turned around. "We have decided to train together at times and that's it, no hanging around afterwards, no getting a bite to eat. Just training," Hanabi said as they moved forward. Naruto exclaimed, "It worked, Hinata. It worked, by accident because he was so relieved that they didn't despise him." At that moment, Naruto recognized his error and sensed the murderer's intent emanating from the two children behind him. As soon as Naruto began to cheer, the bodyguards had departed and were now hiding in the ground-level bushes, prepared to pursue the pursuit. Internally, Hinata panicked as Hanabi turned to face her. She looked at her sister for a few seconds before turning and fleeing. This gave Naruto the signal to depart, and he began to flee. Hanabi and Konohamaru immediately followed, vowing to exact Kami's wrath on whoever they apprehended. A few days later, after gathering at their regular location, Team 7 awaited Kakashi's announcement regarding the day's schedule. The three had begun studying one of their many jutsu scrolls as usual. 3 pieces of paper were in Kakashi's hand when he unexpectedly arrived an hour earlier than usual. "Okay team, today's the Chunin exams. You have to fill out this paperwork and submit it by noon to take the exams." Then, leaving each genin holding a paper, Kakashi turned around and left. The genin watched him go, reacting in different ways to his departure. After giving us a piece of paper, he arrives earlier than normal and departs? The trio pondered. The 3 noticed that any exam admission forms submitted after noon today would be rejected. Because Hinata did not want this to happen, she gave Naruto and Sasuke instructions to follow her to the location indicated on the admissions paper, which was the admissions office. "I will not be losing the chance of becoming a Chunin because one of you forgot to submit on time," she said angrily, glaring at Naruto. As the 3 of them strolled through Konoha, Hinata took the lead and they talked about what the first test might be. With Hanabi right behind him and Konohamaru's gang trailing behind her, Konohamaru suddenly burst through. Watching Hanabi walk by him with anger in her eyes, Naruto let out a sigh. This time, what did he do? When Konohamaru turned to face Hanabi, he saw that she was closing the distance. He ended up bumping into a big black figure who happened to be turning the corner at the same moment because he was not paying attention to where he was going. "Hey! Watch it, kid!" The figure resembled an exotic circus performer because he was wearing a black onesie and had purple makeup on his face. There was a huge object on his back that had what appeared to be hair on top and bandages wrapped around it. He had lifted Konohamaru into the air by grabbing him by the collar. "You little punk! You know, I've been dying to let some energy out, and I think I just found my punching bag." Gulping, Konohamaru turned to Naruto for assistance. Although he did notice the boy's forehead protector, Naruto was generally unimpressed with the new figure. "In the sand, hidden. Interesting. Sorry about him. You see, he wasn't paying attention to where he was going and accidentally bumped into you. So do you think you'd be able to put him down, please?" Naruto said, putting on one of his fake smiles and scratching the back of his head. "Come on, Konkuro, this imp isn't worth it," a girl said as she rounded the corner behind the boy with the face paint. She was wearing a huge fan on her back in place of a bunch of bandages, and she was undoubtedly more stylish than her companion. The back of her head has 4 blonde pineapple tops protruding from it. Besides, we have to go sign up for the first exam. The admission ends soon, and we didn't come all this way for you to beat up some kid. The words, "Oh, I won't be long, Tamari. I'll break this brat nice and quick," came out of Konkuro's mouth with an evil smile. Then he tightened his hold on the Konohamaru who was struggling. Moegi, Udon, and Hanabi all had worried expressions on their faces for their friend who was having difficulties. Sasuke and Hinata had squinted at Konkuro, prepared to correct him. Naruto kept grinning, but this time he chuckled and used the phrase, "I asked nicely," instead. When Konohamaru and Naruto abruptly switched places, Konkuro's arm immediately fell due to the abrupt weight gain. Using this drop, Naruto managed to break free from Konkuro's hold and turn to face him, putting a fist to Konkuro's stomach. Konkuro swiftly proceeded to kick the blonde after using a chakra string to cause Naruto to falter as he was about to do so. Then Naruto vanished in a cloud of smoke. Konkuro's eyes grew wide as he searched the area for Naruto. Up here, face paint. Everyone looked at Naruto, who was eating a bowl of ramen while perched on a tree branch. When did he? As he tugged at the bandages behind him, Konkuro snarled, "You want to fight? I'll give you a fight, you little brat." "Konkuro, we don't have time for this," Tamari said, pinching her nose. Ignoring her, Konkuro kept tugging at the bandages, which began to come loose from the enigmatic object on his back. The words, "Konkuro, if you don't stop, I'll kill you," came out of nowhere. Konkuro turned to face the voice and froze. Following his eyes, everyone else noticed a red-haired boy standing upside down on the branch across from Naruto. Like his friends, he carried a big gourd on his back. He had dark rims around his eyes and the kanji of love tattooed on his forehead. When the boy arrived, Naruto almost spilled his ramen. "I arrived just a few minutes ago, and I didn't feel him." Konkuro uttered the words, "Sorry Gaara," while perspiring. Then Konkuro used the bandages to retrieve the object from his back. As he fell to the ground, the boy known as Gaara appeared to transform into sand. Setting aside his ramen, Naruto landed in front of Gaara. Gaara's voice was bored as she said, "I apologize for my brother's insolence. We will be on our way." Then Gaara pivoted and escorted his friends off. "Redhead. What's your name?" yelled Sasuke. Tamari appeared to be disappointed that he hadn't asked. But Gaara said, "Gaara of the Sand," with a hint of irritation on his face. Gaara asked, "Now what is your name?" after a few seconds had passed. "Sasuke Uchiha," was Sasuke's response. "Not you. The blonde one," Gaara said in the same monotone. "Naruto Uzumaki," was Naruto's cautious reply. That response appeared to satisfy Gaara, who turned away again. The students and Leaf Genin watched the Sand Genin leave until they rounded a corner and disappeared from view. With a sigh of relief, Naruto rushed to Konohamaru and asked, "You alright?" While holding his shoulders, still appearing somewhat shaken, Konohamaru nodded. "How about you four do your chasing in the park next time? That way there's less of a chance that asses like him will be there," Naruto said with a warm smile. Konohamaru and his team gave a sympathetic nod. The two groups returned to their prior activities after a minute to ensure everyone was alright. One group is being a little more cautious this time. The 7th team kept walking toward the admissions building. "So, Naruto, how did you come to be eating ramen after that boy kicked you?" Hinata asked Naruto after a minute had passed. Sasuke grinned, knowing where Hinata was heading, and Naruto tensed. "Well, it seems like you used a clone. And seeing as I didn't see you make the shadow clone, I would have to assume that it was made before we had even met at the bridge. Is that right?" Hinata continued, knowing Naruto's response. Hesitantly nodding in agreement, Naruto was perspiring. As Hinata went on, "This is going to be fun to watch." Sasuke's grin widened. With their noses millimeters apart, Hinata turned to face Naruto. "So you sent a clone to the bridge and have been stuffing your face with ramen this entire time instead of being with your team?" Naruto gave her the answer by gulping in terror at what was about to happen. A tiny, malevolent grin appeared on Hinata's face. "Right now we have to submit the admission form, but know that Konohamaru won't be the only one running from a Hyuga today after we submit the forms." She turned and resumed her walk after saying that. While walking, she said, "Oh, and remember, unlike Hanabi, I have an active Byakugan. So no matter how hard you try to hide, I will always find you." As Sasuke pictured what Hinata would do to him, a smile appeared on his face. Even though they are like brothers, He would like to see the blonde get revenge for leaving him and Hinata for ramen. A ghost of Naruto floated out of his mouth as he kept moving forward. He tried to think of a way out of his predicament, but only one thing came to mind. I am completely screwed. From above, Kami observed. Yeah, you're screwed, kid. In front of one of Konoha's largest buildings, Team 7 stood. It had a small training studio in the front because it was so large. Behind them, an overly enthusiastic voice could be heard as they passed. Sasuke Uchiha. We meet at last. They turned to see that the voice belonged to a boy their own age. He lacked their age-appropriate style, though. He was dressed in orange leg warmers and a green bodysuit. His brows were as wide as caterpillars, and he wore his forehead protector like a belt. I am Rock Lee, the green beast of the leaf. I have come to challenge you, Sasuke Uchiha. Hinata was attempting to recall where she had first heard the name Rock Lee, while Naruto was perplexed. All right, I've been wanting to try something, and this might be the perfect opportunity, said Sasuke with a sly smile. With a sly smile, Lee assumed his taijutsu position. Inquisitive about what Sasuke intended to test, Naruto and Hinata went to the upper viewing area. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and assumed his own taijutsu stance. In taijutsu, let's see how well these perform. After releasing his weight seals, Sasuke charged at Lee. Sasuke leapt to his feet and performed a spinning back kick in front of Lee. Sasuke saw Lee move fluidly to deflect his kick just as he was ready to make contact. What? Hinata and Naruto were in awe. They couldn't watch the fight as closely because they didn't have a Sharingan, but they did see Sasuke about to strike Lee before his kick abruptly veered off course. As Sasuke continued to throw punches and kicks that Lee deftly sidestepped or redirected, Lee grinned. Sasuke finally leapt back, his breathing now more labored. Well, are you just going to stand there or are you going to fight me? Lee's grin deepened and became a blur for Hinata and Naruto. But Sasuke followed Lee's every move. And he became irritated as he saw Lee's swift approach and his arms moving too slowly to defend himself. After hitting Sasuke 3 times in the chest, Lee fell to the ground and kicked him beneath the chin, sending him flying. Lee materialized as a shadow behind Sasuke while he was in midair. Parts of Lee's bruised and beaten hands were visible as the bandages covering them began to come off. 2 shuriken pinned the bandages to the wall just as Lee was ready to wrap them around Sasuke. Sasuke was able to regain his bearings and land safely on the floor when Lee halted his attack. When the shuriken were flung, a huge red turtle caught everyone's attention. Lee walked solemnly over to stand in front of the tortoise, his head lowered. Sensei, I am sorry. I didn't mean to use. But you did try using it. It doesn't matter if you didn't mean it. The fact is you still were about to use a forbidden jutsu. With the exception of Lee, everyone appeared to have been slapped across the face. He's expressing regret to a turtle, and the turtle is responding. The turtle went on, you're a disgrace. Which made Lee wince. Now come out. Guy-sensei. A mature Lee appeared behind the smoke that suddenly filled the area above the turtle. Lee. You have made a terrible mistake. Now receive your punishment. Lee was struck in the face by the man who allegedly called Guy-sensei, who did not hold anything back. The strength sent Lee flying a few feet. I'm sorry, Lee. It's for your own good, said Guy-sensei as he knelt down next to Lee as he was getting back up. Guy-sensei. I'm so sorry, Lee said, tears streaming down his face. Behind them, a mirage of a rocky beach at sunset emerged. I'm sorry too, Lee, Guy-sensei exclaimed. Then, just as they were about to embrace, a wave crashed in their path. Naruto shuddered at the sight, and Hinata was on the verge of vomiting. Then he took Hinata's hand and guided her out of the area. Soon after, Sasuke joined them, wondering if Ino had mastered the art of memory erasure. Team 7 was moving toward the 3rd floor. 2 children were standing in the doorway, attempting to keep everyone out of the group of children gathered around a door. The first exam room, 301, was marked on the sign above the door. It was only the 2nd floor, though. Naruto looked more closely and saw that Kotetsu and Izumo were obstructing the door. At the moment, a girl in pink was attempting to enter, but her attempts were unsuccessful. After kicking her back into the hallway, Izumo began to discuss how they wouldn't allow weak genin to enter, or something similar. Hinata noticed her cousin Neji as they approached. Then she recalled the source of the name, Rock Lee. Hold on, the teammate of Neji Ni-san is the boy with the caterpillar eyebrows. Hold on a second. Neji Ni-san's teammate is the boy with the caterpillar eyebrows. How many times has he had to see that terrible mirage, and how has he managed to tolerate it? The pink-clad girl made another attempt but was again repelled. A little harder this time. Neji came up behind her, grabbed her, and stopped her from colliding with the wall. Surprised that Neji would assist someone in that way, Hinata arched her brows. Oh. That's how you handle those two, then. Neji was usually content to observe and let events unfold naturally. For Hinata, witnessing him stop someone from getting hurt like that was very juicy gossip. The sign has genjutsu over it, Hinata whispered as she turned on her Byakugan. Sasuke ignored the other genin and nodded before moving on. Knowing that they didn't want to draw attention to themselves or the genjutsu, Hinata did the same. You all are idiots if you get fooled by a simple genjutsu like that, declared Naruto, who sadly failed to see Sasuke's true motivations. The others in the rooms let go of their desire to kill while Kotetsu and Izumo were sweating. When she felt a hand on her shoulder, the girl in the pink shirt approached him and grabbed his collar, preparing to slam her fist into him. Tenten, don't waste your time on some idiot who's dumb enough to shout the answer to everyone. Trust me, he'll have enough pain being dealt to him without your input. Tenten calmed down and let go of a terrified Naruto. Neji and Tenten departed in silence as she turned to head for the staircase. When Tenten left the room, Naruto became a little more at ease. That is, until he turned to face Hinata and his team. I really screwed up this time, he gulped. He said, I'll make you pancakes, in an attempt to spare himself a beating later. Hinata paused for a few seconds before responding, her intention to kill having ceased. Deal, she said in a low, ashamed voice. When Naruto finally noticed Sasuke, he let out a sigh of relief before finding himself in a new predicament. Sasuke's eyes assured him that he would be in pain in one way or another regardless of what Naruto attempted to offer. Slumping at this point, Naruto uttered the words, let's just get to the testing room before I open my big mouth again, in a melancholy tone. Then, with his team in tow, he headed for the stairs, prepared to shut his mouth the next time he attempted to open it. Sakura and Ino immediately tackled Sasuke as soon as they walked into the testing room. After a moment of processing the two blurs that rushed past him, Naruto began to laugh at the irony of the situation. Naruto's laugh caused a tick to appear on Sasuke's head. Variously sympathetic to Sasuke, Sakura and Ino's teams approached and joined Team 7. Troublesome, Shikamaru said, taking one loom at the scene. Haha, Sasuke, do you want me to do a substitution jutsu for you? I wouldn't mind getting in on that. Sakura and Ino exchanged two hateful glares with Kiba. He tried his hardest to ignore them, but they were gradually weakening his resolve. Just a suggestion, but I would quiet down if I were you. You're making yourselves a target for the others. An older boy approached them, his hair unusually gray. Naruto felt uncomfortable. The one he received when someone attempted to hide their malevolent intentions. But Naruto had learned enough to play dumb and not reveal his true thoughts to these people. Huh? What do you mean by that? The older boy motioned to the other genin present. The majority of them are 2 or 3 years older than Naruto and the others. Many of them are letting their murderous intent show. The other genin teams had never seen so much and were shocked when it swept over them, but Team 7 appeared unconcerned by the murderer's intent. By the way, I'm Kabuto, acknowledged the older boy. Shikamaru had doubts about Kabuto. So, Kabuto, you're pretty old for a genin. Most of the people here are only 15 or 16 years old. You look to be in your 20s, much older than the average genin. No offense, just curious, he said, choosing to interrupt the conversation. To be honest, I've failed this exam 9 times, Kabuto said with a feeble smile. There were different responses among the Konoha 9. Kabuto then replied, well, it's not all bad. Over the years I've been able to take notes on everybody, and I think I've finally prepared enough this time. These cards contain information on almost everyone here, he said, removing a stack of cards. Information about Naruto appeared out of nowhere as he held up a blank card. Let's see, Naruto. You've done 23 D rank missions and 1 A rank mission. The words, and why do you have records on Naruto? He's never done this exam before, caused Sasuke to narrow his eyes. Kabuto nodded and continued, I've learned that the new people taking the exams are the ones I have to watch out for, not so much the older people. Although Sasuke didn't seem happy with this response, he didn't bring up the topic again. So what do you have about Rock Lee? He asked instead. The image of a person and their stats appeared with chakra as Kabuto smiled and withdrew another card. Let's see. He's done 62 D rank missions and 14 C rank missions. He also doesn't seem to be capable of ninjutsu or genjutsu, and can only use taijutsu as a result. A boy who can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu. Shocked many of the Konoha 9. Anyone else? This time, Naruto responded, What about Gaara? Sasuke, who was still upset with Gaara for ignoring him, appeared eager to hear this response as well. Kabuto pulled out another card, and all of Gaara's information appeared at once. Gaara of the Desert has done 23 B-rank missions and 8 A-rank missions. Also, he has supposedly accomplished these missions without receiving a single scratch. He, like Lee, isn't very diverse. Gaara only uses ninjutsu and his other skills are lacking. His team is made up of his siblings Temari and Kankuro. Gaara's mission record shocked all 9 of the Konoha. Even more shocking is the fact that he reportedly didn't get any scratches during them all. Kabuto smiled and replied, "Anyone out there you'd like to know about? It's more fun to find the person when you don't know the name." Naruto observed the various hidden villages as he peered out into the genin. Waterfall, grass, sand, clouds, and a musical note. "Hey you! Where are the music notes from?" Naruto said, turning to face the older boy. "The village hidden in the sound. They're a new, small ninja village, so that's why they aren't as well known. They haven't had the time to become well known to the other nations." After hearing Kabuto's statement, one of the hidden sound ninjas thought it was offensive. He chose to walk to stand in front of Kabuto in order to teach him a lesson. He had an odd arm attachment on his right arm and appeared to be the child of a mummy and a porcupine. Additionally, he stooped and hung his arms. "You're saying the sound isn't well known because we're weak, aren't you?" The sound nin gave Kabuto a right hook to the face as he attempted to explain. Kabuto barely avoided it, but a moment later he was on the ground, his glasses shattered, and he was feeling extremely sick. "The hidden sound is stronger than all of your pathetic villages. Don't think we're weak because of our size." After helping Kabuto get up, the mummy man returned to his team, but he brushed her off and assured them that he would be alright. Hinata and Sasuke were about to discuss with Naruto what the mummy guy might have done to cause Kabuto to become so agitated when they heard a commanding voice reverberate through the room. "Alright, you maggots. My name is Ibiki Morino, I'll be your proctor for the first exam. The test is 2 hours long. As you can see, the desks have a name sticker on them. Find your sticker and then we'll begin the test. This test has 10 questions. You will be given the 10th question when 15 minutes are left. We have Chunin on the sides keeping watch over you to catch any and all cheating. You have 3 strikes. On the 3rd, you and your team are out and you've failed the exam. Now find your seat and we will pass out the test papers." The genin followed instructions without question. Partly due to compliance, and in part because Ibiki exuded fear and gave off the impression that he would execute you in the most agonizing manner if you disobeyed him. Sakura was sitting next to Naruto when they were seated. He didn't seem to care that she was repulsed by him. He was concentrating on the test and the test only because he was afraid that he would fail it, just like he had failed all of his previous tests. Many of the genin were left perplexed after receiving their tests. Sasuke pondered, a genin can't answer these questions. After realizing the purpose of the test, Sasuke activated his Sharingan, located a person who was truly responding to the questions, and mimicked their hand gestures. Hinata also picked it up quickly and started using her Byakugan. About 20 minutes into the test, Naruto realized that he had no way to cheat without being discovered. Even if he attempted to cheat off Sakura, she would eventually discover and conceal her paper, or the Chunin would catch him. Naruto didn't have an idea until Kankuro got up and asked to use the restroom. He invited Kankuro to accompany him, and the two left the room with a Chunin in tow. Naruto created a clone once inside the stall. The clone then applied the silence jutsu and the invisibility henge to itself. The clone and Naruto walked out of the stall. As he waited for his clone to receive the answers, Naruto returned to the room, sat down, and began sketching a seal on the paper. 10 more minutes later, Naruto felt the information pour in. He discovered how everyone else was cheating on this test by using the answers. He wasn't shocked by most approaches, but he was intrigued by Gaara's. How is a sand eye made? As well as how to obtain one for the hot springs. After completing all the questions, Naruto returned to his drawing of the seal. To make the seal last at least a day, some sealing ink is now being surreptitiously removed. Alright maggots. Time for the 10th question. But be warned, if you fail to answer this question correctly, you and your team will not be able to take a Chunin exam ever again. Take this time to decide whether you'll take that chance, or you'll back out and live to fight another day. The genin were taken aback. Many people were unable to cope with the pressure of having to make such a difficult decision. To the chagrin of his teammates, one genin declared, "I back out," until roughly half of the teams remained. Several others followed suit. Anyone else cared to play it safe? Or would they rather risk certain death? Ibiki asked, continuing his mental torture. Naruto was done and put his hand on the surface. That's it, I'm tired of waiting. Give us the question. I'm so close to finishing this exam, there's no way I'm backing out because of some cheap mind tricks you're trying to pull. Give some bite instead of all your bark. Only one other person had reprimanded Ibiki in such a manner, leaving everyone in disbelief. That individual, who was also Ibiki's spouse and an Anbu commander, was capable of eliminating 5 mid-level Chunin at once. Every Chunin anticipated that Ibiki would immediately murder or torture Naruto. Ibiki, however, laughed instead. Everyone's spines tingled when he laughed. I like your spunk, kid. Anyone else want to leave after that? Ibiki's smile grew frightful as he peered out into the classroom. After that, nobody else departed. The statement, "You all passed the test," was made. As the genin processed this, there was silence. The first to reply was Naruto, who said, "Huh?" in his wittiest remark to date. What about the 10th question? He stopped smiling. The 10th question was whether you had the guts to stay after given such a risky choice. Ibiki began to remove his head covering, exposing unsightly scars. In the field you need to make hard decisions. Sometimes you are only given a second to think about them. But it's these decisions that are the difference between life and death. You'll find yourself against impossible odds, but you must push forward and do your part on the mission. Otherwise your teammates will suffer for your cowardice. The scars reached the genin if his words did not. The majority of people took Ibiki's warning seriously because few had ever witnessed such an injury and because of his demanding tone. Now, wait for the instructor of the second exam too. Anko quickly unfurled herself from the ball she had tucked herself into and hung a huge banner that read, "The second exam." After a blur flew through the window. At the scene, every genin had a drop of perspiration. Anko surveyed the class. What the hell, Ibiki? There's so many. Well, no matter. I promise to half this number by the time I'm done with them. Alright you brats. Meet tomorrow at 8 in the morning at Training Ground 44. Then Anko went out as fast as she had come in. Many bewildered faces and sweat drops were left in their wake. Gaara, who had remained silent the whole time, left without needing to regroup. His siblings followed and snapped out of their stunned looks. Soon after, the other teams did the same. In Team 7, Hinata was the first to get better and had started slapping Naruto to break his daze. The sound of the slap startled Sasuke and many others, who hurried to prevent themselves from experiencing the same thing. Ibiki went to get the tests after the genin had all left. Many gave incorrect or outright false answers. The majority from the Leaf had a special Kekkei Genkei to assist, but others had the right answers. He was shocked to discover the correct answers on Naruto Uzumaki's paper, but he was also startled to see a seal on it. Confetti exploded into Ibiki's face as some chakra was channeled into the seal. Naruto Uzumaki made Ibiki laugh for the second time today. I'll give that kid credit for having guts. Then, still covered in confetti, Ibiki went on. When his husband finally arrived, he laughed when he saw how Ibiki's face was covered in tiny squares of paper. You didn't see the most frightful man in Konoha staring at you with confetti all over his face every day. Later on in the day, Haku and Sasuke were strolling down the street. Hinata had clan business, and Naruto had to work at Ichiraku's. However, Sasuke was grateful that they weren't there and didn't mind. His desire to spend more time with Haku grew. Every time, he felt the need for more. They celebrated finishing the first exam today. 1 down, 2 more to go. For Sasuke, Haku was thrilled. Sasuke had supported Zabuza ever since his death. The closest thing he had to a family was Sasuke. The first exam is supposed to be the easiest. The others are sure to be twice as hard, since becoming a Chunin would put him one step closer to being able to hunt for Itachi. Sasuke took this test very seriously. Haku grumbled, you know, constantly brooding isn't a very good look for you. The girls might find it cool, but if you ask me, it's just creepy. Sasuke broke his brood and apologized. So where is this restaurant you wanted to show me? I'm starving, and no dango this time. We've gone to Tenrai Dango 6 times in the last 3 weeks. You may never tire from it, but I don't know how much longer I can handle eating so much dango. Sasuke grinned at this, feeling proud of himself for being able to continue going for dango for so long. But it had to end, as all good things do. Sasuke realized that although he could eat it every day, not everyone else could, and he didn't want to upset Haku. Sasuke had discovered a charming little eatery on the outskirts of Konoha for this reason. It was a peaceful spot with good food and a lovely view of Konoha's surrounding forest. Haku was relieved that it wasn't just another dango place when they got there. Although there wasn't much of a line, Sasuke had reservations so they wouldn't have to wait. As they arrived at the table, Sasuke had to pull out a chair so Haku could sit in it. At this, Haku arched an eyebrow, but he still relished the attention. They ordered dinner and chatted lightly while they ate. It mostly involved rumors about other ninjas. Nothing significant, just the rumors they had heard that were circulating. So Haku, do you have any missions next week? There's a festival for the Chunin exams we're having next week and I was wondering if you wanted to go with me? Sasuke asked, turning to face Haku after the waiter had left after presenting the bill. When he realized what he was saying sounded like a date, Sasuke's face turned pink. Prior to Haku, Sasuke had acknowledged that he had no interest in girls, but he also had no interest in boys. He didn't mind going on a date with Haku, but he didn't want to start things too quickly and upset Haku. Haku, who had also never shown interest in anyone but Sasuke, had a pale pink face. As a result, Haku was inexperienced in this romantic game and was agitated when he was asked to go on what amounted to a date with Sasuke. Do you mean like a date? With all the girls hanging off of him, Haku wasn't totally sure which team Sasuke batted for, but he had never seen Sasuke show interest in any of them, so he wanted to make sure Sasuke meant it. It doesn't have to be if you don't want to, Yes, I would like it to be a date. Both Haku and Sasuke were taken aback and agitated. Sasuke was impressed by Haku's declaration that he did want the date, and Haku was impressed by how bold and impetuous he had just been. To be certain, Sasuke inquired, "Wait, really?" Sasuke grinned. Haku nodded in agreement, and he had completely forgotten about the other two tests. Even better, he had feelings for the gay boy he cared for. Sasuke would have performed a small dance and pulled a Naruto if he hadn't been so proud of his Uchiha heritage. Will we wear yukatas for the festival? I've seen many people do that, but I'm not sure why. Haku had never taken part in festivals, although he had witnessed them in the villages he and Zabuza had visited. If you want to. It's mostly traditional without any hidden meaning, but it's usually couples who do so, said Sasuke, his blush having receded to his cheeks and his composure restored. Wouldn't we be going as a couple? Sasuke's ears turned pink as he nodded in agreement. Then it's settled, we'll go in yukatas. So what time are we going? The festival starts around 6, we can meet up Tenrai Dango, and walk to the festival from there. Haku paid for his half of the meal after giving a nod of comprehension. Sasuke followed suit before getting to his feet. Both a little giddy, the two left the restaurant together. Sasuke had finally arrived at his own house after walking Haku home. Sasuke hurriedly checked to make sure nobody was there after entering. Sasuke needed total seclusion because Naruto had surprised him by hiding in the house a few times. Sasuke went to the living room and turned on some music after making 2 checks, one with his Sharingan. After that, he celebrated the day's events by dancing. After an hour of dancing, he finally became weary and went to bed. Sasuke slept soundly for the first time since the massacre, his mind racing with plans for the following week. While strolling through Konoha's streets, Naruto yawned. He had gotten up early today, even though he wasn't a morning person. Around 6 o'clock, he woke up and was unable to fall back asleep. Naruto opted for some instant ramen because Ichiraku wasn't yet open. It was 7:26 when he looked into the window of a clock shop nearby. Well, I suppose Hinata would be leaving at this time. Jumping over to the Hyuga compound, Naruto hoped his teammate hadn't left earlier. The 2 Hyuga guards on either side of the entrance grilled him when he arrived. However, Hinata's appearance saved Naruto. She hurriedly assessed the situation before yelling at the guards that Naruto was not a threat because he was her friend. When the guards learned that the demon brat was friends with the Hyuga heiress, they were momentarily stunned. After they recovered from their shock, they returned to their posts and apologized to Hinata. After that, Hinata strolled to the second test. Not wanting to spend any more time with the guards, Naruto hurried to follow. Man, those guards are scary. If you didn't come when you did, I would be running for my life right about now. With his arms behind his head, Naruto and Hinata had fallen in step, savoring the morning light. Hinata said, "Why were you waiting in front of my house?" Without even glancing at Naruto. "Well, I woke up early and couldn't sleep after that. I saw it was about 30 minutes before the scheduled time and assumed you'd be heading out for the exam soon," Naruto replied without missing a beat. "But why did you wait in front of my house? You could have just sat on a tree and waited for me to come out." Naruto paused to reflect. "I guess I wanted to surprise you. Since you haven't had any friends before me and Sasuke, I thought you might enjoy someone waiting for you. Sorry if it was weird. I don't have much experience with friends. Or at least dealing with the family of friends. Sorry if I made things really depressing." Once more, Naruto was scratching the back of his head. His warmth was enhanced by this habit. The words, "Thank you, I liked you waiting for me," made Hinata blush a little. The smile that swept across Naruto's face split it in two. The sight caused Hinata to become agitated. Why am I so embarrassed even though I feel so good? Fortunately for Hinata, Naruto didn't appear to notice, and the two managed to reach training ground 44 with 15 minutes remaining. A few minutes later, Sasuke showed up with a barely noticeable bounce in his step. Naruto had known Sasuke long enough to recognize the first signs of something strange and took immediate notice. Later, Naruto intended to inquire about it. If Sasuke truly displayed it in his walk, Naruto could tell something very good, but he was unable to figure out what it might be. Naruto shrugged it off, greeted Sasuke, and began talking about his development as a dango maker. The two spent the next few minutes discussing their progress toward mastering their favorite foods. Great, not only has my sister outperformed me in the gentle fist, but my teammates have outperformed me in general life. Hinata thought, feeling as though she was falling behind the two. Oh yeah, Hinata, come over my place next time you have a chance and I'll make you the pancakes I owe you. I can even show you how they're made if you want, Naruto said, recalling his promise. Hinata blushed a little again, but Naruto didn't find anything odd in what he said. He'd teach me, one-on-one, with no one else around. What? No, Hinata, take control of yourself. You will still be married off to a suitor, even though your father can only do so much, and that's not how I like Naruto. He's just a friend, that's all. Hinata? Hinata was so engrossed in her thoughts that she neglected to respond to Naruto's question. What? Oh yes, I'd like that very much. Grinning, Naruto faced a dubious Sasuke once more. Hinata fervently hoped the Sharingan couldn't read people's thoughts by copying them. She didn't even know what was going on with her at the moment, and she didn't want anyone, especially the Uchiha, to know about her internal conflict regarding romance. Anko emerged in a dust cloud at precisely 8 o'clock. She then displayed two scrolls that appeared to have been taken from an invisible pocket on the back of her jacket. Welcome to the Forest of Death, you brats. For the second exam, your team will be given either a Heaven or Earth scroll, she said. You need both scrolls to pass. Now to get a scroll, you need to take it from another team. You will need to fill out an "if perishes" form for your families and villages stating that we are not responsible for any killing within that forest. While killing another team isn't prohibited, it's also not encouraged, so try to hold back on your urges, you little savages. On that final point, Anko glanced at Gaara. Naruto laughed at Anko's anti-child behavior. He was among the few individuals who were aware of her connection to Iruka. Anko materialized behind him as he felt a kunai sever his cheek a moment later. Did I say something funny, kid? Now, Anko threatened to draw the blade across Naruto's throat with a kunai. Naruto didn't even blink. I'm laughing at the irony of the situation. If not for having seen it myself, I would have never guessed you'd go out with MFF. Anko's cheeks were flushed and she had covered Naruto's mouth. You know too much, brat, she said, cloning him on the head. Knowing that he was in charge of her, Naruto smiled foxy at her. Anko turned away, trying to regain control, and went on to describe the test. You have 5 days to reach a tower in the middle of the forest. You're only let inside once you show both scrolls. Once that's done, you have finished the test. Oh yeah, you open a scroll, you've failed the test. Anko was going to approach the scroll both to unwind when a face materialized beside her. It was one of the grass genin's heads. Her tongue wrapped around the kunai that Anko threw, and her neck was stretched to unthinkable lengths. You forgot this, miss. Wouldn't want to be a kunai short in case of emergency, now would we? Get away from me before I put this kunai to use, said Anko, squinting at the weapon and carefully retracting it. The grass kunoichi pulled her neck back to her body and bowed her head. To obtain a "if perishes" form, the genin teams proceeded gradually. Naruto nearly burst out laughing when he got his. As if my death would cause a huge commotion. To him, signing his name appeared to be a pointless ceremonial act. Even though Sasuke considered Haku, he signed the form without hesitation. How will I be able to handle Itachi if I can't even make it through a Chunin exam? He was aware that some powerful genin were present, but Sasuke was also aware of his own strength. He didn't have a low opinion of himself, and this test was a great way to compare himself to others. Hinata hesitated more than she should to sign. She was still getting used to living her entire life in constant danger. She would be missed by her family, unlike Sasuke and Naruto. She believed she had nearly lost the man she called her father when they lost her mother. Fortunately, he was able to find happiness in his daughters and avoided becoming harsh and aloof. She knew she and her team had come too far to give up, but she also knew he couldn't bear another defeat. She wrote her name on the form before she could think any more. Naruto offered to take the scroll, but he was promptly stopped because he was likely going to show it off to the other people. Sasuke was chosen to go instead, and he concealed the Heaven Scroll in his pack from the other genin. Team 8 was having some issues while Team 7 was getting ready. The issue wasn't getting the scroll, rather, it was Sakura finding a Rock Lee on one knee, vowing to always protect her, when she returned to her team. The boy's eyebrows and awful sense of style made Sakura shudder. She attempted to reject him, quite harshly, too. But he seemed unconcerned and continued to ask her out and declare his love. When Kiba noticed Sakura's growing frustration, he laughed. Shino also had a small smirk on his face, though it was concealed. Sakura had been so annoying to be around over the last few months that even Shino was fed up with her. Nevertheless, Kiba and Shino would protect her because she was still a member of their team. Any of the Konoha who were watching found it hilarious to see her in a situation where the roles were reversed. All of the genin received a scroll after deciding within 30 minutes whether or not to complete the form. At the moment, they were waiting for the test to start while standing in front of the gate to which they had been assigned. They didn't have to wait long for the gates to open, indicating that the second exam would begin. As if to get as far away from their proctor as possible, the genin teams dashed into the forest. Naruto ran for a few minutes before stopping suddenly and assuming a defensive position. Sasuke and Hinata swiftly followed, using their dojutsu. Jump was Hinata's command. 3 sets of arms appeared from the ground just as they did. 3 of the same person emerged, and Team 7 watched from the branch above. He was from the hidden rain, as indicated by his headband. They all turned to mud before they could question him. I can't see any chakra signatures nearby. He must have sent squads of clones out to try and take out some of the weaker teams. At this point, Naruto and Sasuke calmed down and slowly put their kunai back in their pouches. Then Hinata took the lead, and Team 7 was racing through the forest once more. After running through the treetops for about 2 hours, Hinata called for a much-needed break with Sasuke. Naruto appeared to have had at least 8 more hours to spare. How does he manage to stay so strong? All right, we need a password in case one of us gets lost. That way when they return, we can use it to make sure it's actually them and not someone using a henge, Sasuke said to his teammates after they had finished sleeping. Hinata nodded in agreement. Naruto was aware that he wasn't very good at recalling this information on the spot, but he also knew Sasuke was aware of this and approved of the plan. The password is: the sun sets on the last day of autumn. The moon rises on the first night of winter. Got it? Both Naruto and Hinata nodded. Naruto could sense the password leaving his mind as fast as it entered, even though Hinata was able to memorize it. With a sly smile, Sasuke turned and guided the group deeper into the forest. Naruto eventually had to urinate. In any case, Naruto hopped off to find some privacy because Hinata and Sasuke needed to rest. He came back a few minutes later. Naruto flawlessly recited the password when Sasuke asked him. At this, Sasuke grinned and Hinata arched an eyebrow. In an instant, Naruto had a kunai at his throat and 2 shuriken in his legs. In order to counter any genjutsu, Sasuke also had his Sharingan activated. You see, Naruto wouldn't have been able to remember the password. I noticed you earlier, but I thought this might serve us better. Naruto vanished into the previously mentioned Rain Nin. This time, Hinata made sure it was the real one by using her Byakugan. So what's going to happen, is your team is going to give us your scroll and maybe I won't kill you. The Rain Nin gave his team a signal while narrowing his eyes. On the other end of the tree branch, 2 more rain ninjas touched down. Indeed, Hinata attested to their presence. Hatred blazed in their eyes as they stood there. After a while, they pulled the scroll from their bag and held it up to Hinata. Hey now, if you want your teammate to survive, I would suggest not using a fake to bargain his life with. Those Sharingan, damn them. The Rain Ninja thought. The Rain Ninja reluctantly handed their Heaven Scroll to Sasuke. Sasuke kicked the Rain Nin he had been holding captive in exchange for his teammate's help. Before the Rain Nin turned and departed, the 2 teams stared at one another for some time. As they departed, Hinata kept an eye on them to make sure they didn't attempt a surprise attack. Hinata declared, "They're gone." With a nod, Sasuke turned to face Naruto's last location. Hinata used her Byakugan to look out. I see his chakra, but it's far away. It looks like he's in a giant snake. Worried for their teammate, the 2 hurried over. Naruto discovered himself inside a 50-meter-long snake's belly. He had just finished when the snake had ambushed him from behind and gulped him down. At the moment, he was attempting to break free by clawing the snake's slick interior. Then he had an idea that might save his life, albeit a gory one. Saying, "Shadow Clone Jutsu," he crossed his fingers. The largest snake Sasuke and Hinata had ever seen was inflated by something when they arrived. The snake was filled with lumps that developed all over its skin. The snake eventually burst like a balloon, scattering its remnants all over the place. Sasuke moved quickly to shield himself and Hinata from the snake's entrails by launching a fireball in front of them. Hundreds of Narutos, all covered in snake guts, stood in front of them after the fireball had subsided. They all exclaimed, "Hey guys!" together. Only one Naruto covered in snake guts remained after they poofed themselves out of existence. Sasuke's nose wrinkled at the stench, and Hinata shuddered at the sight. After observing their responses, Naruto examined himself closely and even smelled the snake's gut to get a sense of how foul it smelled. Naruto made the hand gesture, "Freshen up jutsu," while grabbing some lavender he saw. The air began to swirl around him and pick up speed. They follow the air currents after Naruto releases the flowers. The air then easily pushed off all the snake's guts and filled his clothes. His clothes now smelled of the lavender he had grabbed, but the flowers were nowhere to be seen when he got back to the ground. Naruto grinned at his teammates and re-smelled, saying, "Now I smell like Hinata." At this, Hinata's ears turned pink. "Why does he know how I smell?" she asked. With the same query, Sasuke arched an eyebrow at Naruto. "What? I was stinky, now I smell good," asked Naruto, bewildered. Hinata's ears kept becoming more and more pink. "Why do you know what Hinata smells like?" asked Sasuke with a sly smile. When Naruto heard how eerie that sounded, he flushed. "Sorry, I just have a heightened sense of smell, and well, that's what Hinata smells like." Sasuke appeared content with this, but he turned to see Hinata's face was slightly flushed. "Oh, is this making Hinata nervous?" Shaking his head, Sasuke laughed. "It will be entertaining to observe." Team 7 left again to wait for Naruto to join them. As it was the third day and the only teams they had faced had already lost their scroll, Team 8 was struggling. They were exhausted, and Sakura was beginning to worry that they still lacked a scroll of heaven to accompany their Earth. As always, Shino maintained his composure, while Kiba covered his eyes to try to ignore Sakura's digressions. Hoping through the trees, they were looking for a team to fight for an Earth scroll once more. A loud crash sounded abruptly to their left. They went to look into it and discovered that it was Naruto, but with a more feral-like appearance, battling an odd man. Sakura was horrified by what she saw and thought, if Naruto is fighting alone, then where is Sasuke? Kiba and Shino went to assist. She left her teammates behind and set out to find Sasuke. Team 7 had not come across any other teams on the third day of the test. Unless you include surreptitiously observing Gaara's strength as he, seemingly enjoying himself, crushed a waterfall nin. Hinata was still developing her tolerance for gore, but she was still a little shaken by that. She was much better off than she had been in Wave Country, frozen in shock at the sight. Sasuke shuddered a little, but he managed to keep his PTSD in check. Naruto was pleased with his teammates' progress and their ability to tolerate blood. When the grass nin from earlier attacked, Team 7 was scurrying through the trees in search of another team. She was exposing her teeth and her neck was stretched to an unmanageable length. Team 7 dispersed and took up positions to attack. Only one grass nin was visible when Hinata used her Byakugan to locate the other members of the team. Furthermore, she became aware of her own power. "She's way too powerful for a genin. We can't beat her." Unfortunately, it was too late to flee because Sasuke had already been involved in combat with the grass nin. Despite using his Sharingan to try to keep up, Sasuke was hardly able to dodge or stop the grass nin's attacks. Naruto let go of his weight seals and charged at the grass nin after noticing that the snake nin was preoccupied, punching the grass nin's jaw firmly. Team 7 noticed that the grass nin's face was completely ripped apart, as if it were a mask, as she stood up. With a chuckle that chilled them to the bone, the grass nin grinned. Next, she grabbed her and pulled her up. She was relieving a man who looked like a snake by removing her face. "Hello children, now while it was fun to play around with you, I came here for Sasuke." The man sped forward, stretching his neck out before anyone could respond. He made an odd mark on Sasuke's neck after sinking his teeth into it. As though his life had been drained from him, Sasuke fell to the ground. At last, Naruto vented his rage. His hair went wild and his eyes turned red. Around him, The atmosphere grew quiet. Hinata felt icy and turned to face Naruto in terror. Where is the source of this power? Hinata, take care of Sasuke. I've got to take out the trash, Naruto said in a voice that wasn't his. Naruto turned into a red streak and raced in the direction of the Snake Man without waiting for an answer. Despite their best efforts, Shino and Kiba were unable to help Naruto. Shino attempted to place the buds on the man, but the man cut the beetles in half with a sword he had drawn from his mouth. A few times, Kiba had attempted fang over fang with Orochimaru, but he was too slow. Orochimaru eventually grew weary of them and chose to call off the conflict. He appeared in front of Shino after dealing Kiba and Orochimaru both devastating blows. The boy was slashed across the chest. Just enough to leave a nasty cut, but nothing too deep. At last, the man turned to face Naruto, grinning slyly. In front of him, Naruto delivered a lethal blow to the man's temple. As if it were a second skin, the man climbed out of his own mouth after crashing into the ground. Then, brandishing his sword, he confronted another of Naruto's charges. However, the sword reappeared through Naruto's back after the man stabbed it into his stomach this time. After his anger was subdued, Naruto thudded to the ground and hit the forest floor. Before going to Sasuke, Hinata had paused for a few moments to break out of her reverie. She turned on her Byakugan and examined him. He was in good physical condition aside from a few minor scrapes. Sasuke appeared to be making an effort to fend off the mark the man had given him, but it appeared to be a losing battle. While she waited for Naruto, Hinata did what she could, tending to his wounds. When he entered that phase, whatever it was, she was afraid of his power. A minute or two later, Sakura had appeared out of the blue, fawning over Sasuke and worried about him. Hinata hurried off to find her blonde teammate after giving Sakura the order to watch over Sasuke. She saw the man enter her vision and wield a sword as he passed through Naruto. She saw Shino and Kiba's damaged states as well, and her eyes widened. She saw Naruto fall to the ground in slow motion. As she hurried to Naruto, she forgot all about the man. The man was gone by the time she got to him, and he was unconscious in a pool of his own blood. Hinata was able to contain a surge of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. Rather, she tried to heal his wound as best she could before rushing to Shino to do the same. After that, she threw Naruto's arms over her shoulder and leapt in Sakura's direction through the trees. Get Sasuke and follow me. I left Shino, Kiba, and Orochimaru behind for now, but we need to act quick before we lose them. Sakura wiped away her tears and followed instructions. The two discovered a cave formed by tree roots in a tiny clearing. They went to get Shino, Orochimaru, and Kiba after putting Naruto and Sasuke in the cave. After escorting the boys to the cave, Hinata and Sakura both passed out. Sakura inquired, what happened to them? Sasuke was told by Hinata what had transpired and the origin of that man. Sakura was frightened. When Hinata noticed this, she sighed and thought, am I the only competent girl in our class? Sakura accepted Hinata's offer to do the first watch without hesitation. Sakura was sound asleep next to Sasuke in a matter of seconds. Hinata let out a weary sigh and shuffled over to Naruto, pulling up his shirt to get a better look at the stab wound after checking and healing what she could with the others. Despite her best efforts to use medical ninjutsu and bandage it, it was insufficient. Since Sakura was sleeping now, Hinata allowed her barriers to collapse, allowing all of her day's suppressed feelings to overwhelm her. Hinata wept for the first time since her mother's passing. Despite her terrible treatment of him, Naruto had wished to be friends with her. He was considerate and unconcerned that she was the Hyuga hire. She appreciated that he treated her the same as everyone else. Since he was the only friend she had, she feared losing him. Although she never spent time with Sasuke, she had been able to get along with him. She never went out for tea with Sasuke or went shopping for clothes with him. Or, simply because Hanabi had no friends, try to get her sister to make friends with a child in her class. She had a lot of experiences from Naruto that she never would have thought to have. He brought emotions she had buried deep inside of her out of the time capsules they had been buried in, made her laugh, and made her feel ashamed. She was only able to observe him struggle to survive against a poison that had covered the sword. Hinata turned her head to listen to Naruto's heartbeat and let her forehead drop to his chest. It was calming to her, so calming that she fell asleep. It was still dark outside and the sun had just begun to rise when Sakura woke up. When she failed to spot the Hyuga, she began to panic as she searched for Hinata. Sakura glanced at Naruto and noticed Hinata dozing off, her head resting on his chest as she gave him a gentle embrace. Sakura was stunned, saying, "What? Naruto and Hinata? What time did this occur? Moreover, why Naruto?" He is despicable, frail, and despised by all. She needed a good 3 minutes to recover. When she realized Sasuke was present, she recovered. She swooned over him for the next 5 minutes. She finally noticed and recalled how battered Kiba and Shino were when she turned her head away from him. She shuffled to them and examined their beaten bodies. In addition to Kiba's bruised face, Sakura could now clearly see Shino's flash across his chest because Hinata had taken off his coat. The poison caused the cut to turn slightly purple. This happened after I left them to look for Sasuke. They would have ended up this way anyhow. And with them, and with you. However, I could have assisted them. I could have taken action. However, Sasuke-kun was injured, and I couldn't have done anything to help him. I could have helped my teammates, but I couldn't do anything to help Sasuke, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sakura had started crying and was berating herself for being so weak. The sound of someone outside caused her to stop. Sakura drew a kunai and clambered outside. Her long pink hair was a mess, and her eyes were red. "Hinata!" she exclaimed. On the other side of the clearing in front of her was the clandestine sound crew. "Hinata!" she exclaimed once more. "Hinata!" Sakura's knees began to tremble in terror. The sounds of her name being yelled roused Hinata. She glanced around quickly, recognizing her current circumstance. At amazing speeds, her face turned to a tomato. She was standing by the entrance after removing herself from Naruto in a matter of seconds. When she heard Sakura yell, "Hinata!" Hinata became aware of what was happening and, in an instant, she was inside Sakura with her Byakugan activated. "Huh? What's this? These two pipsqueaks think they can stand against us. What a joke," the shirtless boy mocked. "We'll see just how good you are, Teme," Hinata said, squinting her eyes. Then she let go of her weight seals and sped in the direction of the taunting boy. Before she had to avoid a blow from the bandaged boy, she had hit 3 chakra points. To avoid the blow, she slightly tipped her head back. Unfortunately, Hinata was struck by a wave of Nassau brutaling, and it was the hand with the odd gauntlet. Hinata collapsed to her knees, unable to control her urge to throw up. This time, the unbandaged boy kicked Hinata hard in the stomach, causing her to return to Sakura. Sakura tried to wake Hinata by running over to her and shaking her back and forth, but she was completely unconscious. "You're a disgrace to Kunoichi. She came to try and defend you and your comrades from us and you watched her, doing nothing to help. You're the most useless ninja I've ever seen," said the female sound genin, pointing to Sakura. When Sakura heard the word useless, she winced. Now holding 2 kunai, she turned to face the sound genin. "I'm getting this one. I want to teach her what a real Kunoichi can do," the sound genin girl declared. Senbon needles were then removed by the sound genin. Sakura let out a frantic cry of war and charged forward. With a sly smile, the sound genin tossed her senbon, the needles sinking into Sakura's chest. Sakura then materialized to the right of the sound genin after poofing into a log of wood. Sakura was filled with senbon once more before being switched out for a log. Sakura was just a few meters away now, making hand signals in anticipation of the upcoming senbon round. After being struck with needles, the sound genin expected Sakura to poof away, but instead she deflected the senbon and completed her jutsu. With lightning-fast reflexes, genin hurled 4 senbon needles at Sakura. 1 at her eyes, 1 at her heart, and 1 at her next. Sakura collapsed to the ground, surrounded by a pool of blood. When the sound genin turned around, Sakura's chakra-infused punch smashed into her face, despite her smirking victory. The force of the blow caused the sound genin to skid a little across the ground and be thrown back a few feet. She discovered that she had been subjected to genjutsu when she turned to face the supposedly deceased Sakura. "I'm mad now." The sound genin no longer held back and was wearing a frown. She moved so quickly that she lifted the girl by her hair and appeared behind Sakura. Sakura waved her arms in an attempt to get away, yelling in agony. "How does it feel, you little bitch?" Sakura's face was streaming with tears of agony. "Yeah? Cry, you useless piece of shit." Something inside Sakura shattered when she heard the word useless again. Useless? No use. I've been just like that. No use. I've never accomplished anything on my own. Instead, I depend on others to complete the challenging tasks. No more. Sasuke is forgotten. He has never helped me in any way. It's time for me to become a kunoichi and begin to value my teammates. Because of a rumor, Sakura held a kunai up and, in a single, flowing stroke, chopped off the hair that had been growing out for the previous 4 years. The sound genin stumbled backwards due to the weight change, which gave Sakura the opportunity to kick the sound genin hard in the stomach, returning to her teammates with the sound genin. The boy without the bandages decided to intervene because he was growing impatient. That's it, Kin. I'm finishing her off. Then, with a kunai aimed directly at Sakura's heart, he charged forward. Sakura was unable to avoid or stop the oncoming attack because she was still recuperating. Rock Lee was in front of her when the unbandaged boy was thrown backwards in a flash of green after he blocked it with his arms. Do not worry, I will protect you. Sakura's eyes began to well up with more tears. Now, the boy she had mistreated was risking his life to keep her safe. I'm tired of this. I'll take care of this brat and then we're getting Sasuke, no more playing around. Now the man in the bandage came forward. Lee vanished and then resurfaced in front of him, giving the man a terrible kick to the head. Lee leaned backwards to avoid the mummy man's punch, which he had prepared for when he recovered. Lee could only make a backward leap before the Nassau struck him. To check on him, Sakura hurried to his side. Lee was prepared to fight to the death to protect Sakura and her allies, even though she could hardly stand much less fight. The boy without a bandage chose to deliver the final blow by attempting a kick. Lee could not defend himself at all. However, it was Sakura who was struck by the foot rather than Lee. She had taken the hit after abruptly moving in front of Lee. Lee barely managed to put his arms around her to shield her from the impact on the tree after she was thrown backwards into him. The sound genin tried to kill both of them at once. With the blade wailing for blood, he pushed the kunai in the direction of their chests. The blood of its intended victim did not quench the blade's thirst. Before Sakura and Lee, Sasuke had shown up and grabbed the kunai. His eyes were clouded, as though he were under the influence of some drug, and he was covered in black marks. He was grinning insanely as he allowed the power to take control of him. This is what you do to my comrades. I guess it's only fair I do the same to yours? He hurled the sound genin into a tree in a matter of seconds, causing it to splinter upon impact. Then he disappeared and reappeared in front of Kin, the genin. He choked her while holding her off a tree root by the throat. Naruto awoke in what appeared to be a sewer. Although the water reached his ankles or so, he didn't appear to get wet. Naruto wandered through the hallways or the sewer-like enclosure in an attempt to locate himself. After a while, he discovered a huge room with a huge cage across it. He started to look around the enormous cage, but he stopped when he noticed that two big eyes were now looking back at him. Hello, Kit. About damn time you came to see me. Naruto staggered back in shock and terror. Why, you're the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi gave Naruto some time to take it all in before continuing, saying, what gave it away? Now listen close, brat. I don't have long. Now, unlike many of the stories in historical texts, I did not intentionally attack the leaf. I was controlled by a user of the Sharingan to do so. Now while I would do anything to get out of this prison, I can't unless you lose control or you let me free. Now over the past 13 years I've grown to respect you, so I'll cut you a deal. I'll teach you jutsu and lend you my power, but in return, you have to promise to never allow me to be imprisoned again after you perish. Do we have a deal? Naruto could hardly hear every word, but this was happening far too quickly for him to follow. He was only processing it now. Wait. What? But you're the nine-tailed fox. A demon. The title of demon is only given by those whose power people are afraid of. I am not an evil entity. I am a being of chakra who has his own emotions and thoughts. Now, I'll give you some time to think it over and process things, but I will not wait forever. Now leave. Your friend is under the influence of a cursed seal and must be stopped. Naruto then woke up after the Kyuubi pushed him from his mindscape. After a few seconds, Naruto managed to orient himself and respond as fast as he could. Naruto unlocked all the restraints and began to move at speeds that only Sasuke and Rock Lee could see. He was standing behind Sasuke in less than a second. You don't need to do this. Drop her, Sasuke. Kin's lack of oxygen caused her to struggle less, and Sasuke's hold on her throat grew tighter. Sasuke. Sasuke allowed Kin to fall to the ground like a doll after a few seconds. Give us your scroll and I won't kill you. Even though he allowed her to survive, Sasuke still desired a reward. In compliance, the mummy man placed an earth scroll in front of Sasuke. Then, silently, he gathered his teammates and walked away. The mark on Sasuke's neck was where his curse mark retracted. Then, as if to clear it of fog, he shook. I couldn't stop myself. But it felt so good. Still trying to comprehend what had happened, Sasuke dropped to his knees. After giving Sasuke a reassuring embrace, Naruto went to see how everyone else was doing. Lee and Sakura managed to reach the cave and take a nap. Naruto hurried over to Hinata in concern after realizing that they were safe for the time being. The sight of her breathing brought him great relief. He quickly checked and discovered that she had just been knocked out. He picked her up gently and carried her to the cave. It was then that Neji and Tenten showed up. Neji had seen Hinata and Sakura in trouble as they were heading to the tower. His team promptly changed course to assist the two kunoichi after he informed them. Lee immediately left his teammates behind to get to Sakura more quickly after learning that she was in danger. When Neji landed, he headed for Naruto. "How is she?" After telling him about Hinata's condition, Naruto allowed him to put her to sleep in the tree root cave. "What happened? When I first saw you guys, you and the Uchiha were unconscious." After letting out a sigh, Naruto told Neji and Tenten what had transpired with the Snake Man. Tenten and Neji were frowning by the end of his tale. Tenten remarked, "It sounds like Orochimaru." Naruto looked at her bewilderedly. With a sigh, Tenten told him that Orochimaru was a Sannin who had gone awry and was now among the world's most dangerous criminals. With a gulp, Naruto expressed his gratitude for having advanced healing. Naruto was pleasantly surprised to see Shino and Kiba waking up as he led Neji and Tenten back to the cave. Naruto reviewed them and then returned to the group and the discussion. Hinata was shocked to see her cousin there when she woke up, and she was even more shocked to see that everyone was awake. She answered Neji's question and then went to see how everyone else was doing. It seems that Shino's beetles had assisted in the fight against the poison and had since evolved to be able to create and consume it themselves. Only minor bruises were sustained by Kiba and Akamaru following some medical ninjutsu. With only minor cuts, Sakura and Lee were more shaken than anything else. She was baffled by Naruto. There were no longer any indications that he had been poisoned or stabbed when she examined him. How on earth is this possible? Hinata hurried on to Sasuke, deciding to ask Naruto later. His chakra network seemed to be being overtaken by the mark, which looked like an infection. It was only a few centimeters into his chakra network at the moment, but if it continued at this pace, it would take over entirely in a few weeks at most. All the teams were ready to depart now that everyone was safe. Naruto was happy to give his team's extra heaven scroll to Team 8 after learning that they were in need of one. After that, the three groups headed off in different directions for a short while before turning to face the tower in order to finish the test. After arriving at the tower and completing the scroll's instructions, Iruka-sensei welcomed Team 7 with open arms. However, it wasn't long before some Chunin and medical nin interrupted. "What happened in those woods?" demanded Anko as he stepped forward. Iruka let out a disappointed sigh at the short duration of his reunion with his students. Anko gave a hard sigh and pinched her nose after listening to several stories for an hour. "Early yesterday morning we found the actual grass genin that had attended the exams with their facial features missing. Putting the pieces together we were able to determine that Orochimaru the Snake Sannin had infiltrated the exams. We were then informed by Team Guy that you faced off with him and apparently Sasuke Uchiha received a mark on his neck." Team 7 gave a nod of comprehension. Anko told Sasuke that they would speak the following day and then dismissed them. When she and Iruka were alone, Anko approached the wall directly and delivered a forceful blow that caused a web of cracks to form behind them. "He was under our noses and I wasn't the slightest bit aware." Her tears were streaming down her cheeks, and Iruka's heart ached at the sight. He was aware that Orochimaru was a sensitive topic and that Anko wanted nothing more than to destroy the man, but he also understood that she was still deeply disturbed by him. Iruka approached and embraced her, pressing their foreheads together. "It's not your fault. He's a master of deception in disguise. You can't blame yourself for not seeing through all his acts. You need to stop thinking he's your responsibility to deal with alone. I don't want to lose, you too." Iruka was crying now, too. He had lost so many people he cared about. He only had Naruto and Anko left, and he would be damned if they perished without him trying everything in his power to keep them alive. "You big idiot." Anko was reminded once more of her love for Iruka, and she expressed it by giving him a kiss that was full of all of her feelings. Iruka reciprocated her enthusiasm at every turn. Anko eventually reverted to her typical behavior and made the decision to intensify their brief makeout session. "Anko. We can't do that here." Anko's only answer was a naughty glint in her eye and a cheeky smile. Iruka could not and would not stop it, and his statement was totally ignored. After the second exam, Team 7 was worn out. They gave themselves a much-needed break because they still had one day left. On the first morning, Hinata even dozed off. But Sasuke had nightmares and found it difficult to fall back asleep. Naruto and Hinata were left to amuse themselves after Kakashi-sensei arrived and took him away for something at noon. Naruto glanced at Hinata's wrist and recalled, "Hey, I never gave you the gladiolus." When she had stopped by for pancakes. Though Naruto didn't wait for her to accept the flower before opening it and bringing it to her, Hinata needed a moment to recall what he was talking about. Do you think you could show me how to flower press with it? At the moment I do not have the proper materials, but I'd be glad to show you when I come over for pancakes, said Naruto, shocking Hinata with his directness. After grinning, Naruto had a thought. How about I give you a seal on your wrist to keep it in? Hinata's ears turned pink as she processed his offer and saw his smile. She reluctantly nodded and raised her jacket just enough to let Naruto see her wrist. Naruto held her hand in his as he unlocked his sealing ink, showing more gentleness than she had imagined possible. Naruto turned with an intensely focused expression and dipped the brush into the jar. He brushed the delicate symbols onto Hinata's forearm, where the ink felt cold against her skin. Hinata's face was slightly flushed because Naruto's face was directly in front of hers, but Naruto was oblivious to the situation. Their foreheads would meet if she leaned forward. And that should do it. Now we just need to give it a second to dry and it'll be ready. Then, raising his head, Naruto saw how close he was to Hinata. Sorry, I didn't realize I was that close to you, he said, jumping back in shock. The two waited in awkward silence as Hinata bowed her head. Sue, how do you like the seal? It doesn't feel any different, was Hinata's statement following an examination of her arm. With a smile, Naruto gave her a kunai to practice sealing in. Hinata balanced the kunai on her wrist, sealed it, and made the ram hand sign. Hinata sensed a tiny smile of her own beginning to form as Naruto's widened. Okay, now unseal it and seal the gladiolus. After doing this, Hinata at last recognized something that didn't quite add up. Wait, this flower must be about a week old, how is it still so fresh? Oh that? You see, time works differently in a seal, you could say it freezes time to an extent. So while it's been a week for us, it's probably only been a few seconds for that flower. Thinking of all the flowers she might be able to press from distant nations without worrying about them wilting before she got home, Hinata nodded in comprehension. At that moment, Hinata recalled the location of Naruto's flower. Wait, are you the one who leaves flowers at my mother's grave every month? Saying, yeah, I might be that person. Why do you ask? Naruto smiled in embarrassment. Hinata threw herself at him and gave him a hug. Thank you, because of my clan duties, I have little personal time when not going for training or missions. I rarely have time to truly go to my mother's grave and honor her. Thank you for honoring her memory when I couldn't. Naruto could feel her tears getting on his shirt. His emotions overcame him. It seemed as though Hinata was a completely different person, and he had never seen her so exposed. Unaccustomed to such circumstances, he gave her a cautious hug in return, allowing Hinata to hold on to him while she sobbed for her deceased mother. Hinata paused after a short while to gather herself. Leaving the embrace, she attempted to regain her normal poise. Thank you. Now you will never speak of this again. With a nod of comprehension, Naruto observed Hinata approach the door while dabbing at her eyes. I'm going for a walk. Naruto was now left in quiet. Hao sat down on the bed and tried to take in what had just transpired. It was the most emotionally taxing situation he had ever encountered, and he had no Sasuke to turn to for guidance. Naruto sat there thinking for the next 2 hours until he decided it was useless. Naruto recalled the Kyuubi and his offer from the second exam. Naruto reclined on the bed and began to meditate in an attempt to reunite with the Kyuubi. As Naruto entered a state of meditation, he felt his conscious mind sink into the bed like water and rise to the surface of his subconscious. So you've returned. Have you made a decision about my offer, brat? I have a question. Once you're set free, what will you do? Over the past millennium I was able to create a home for myself. A place where I can relax. A place where I started a family and gave protection to foxes like myself, the Kyuubi said with a sly smile. What, you're a father? Naruto exclaimed, his eyes widening at the news. The Kyuubi grinned and nodded. A son and daughter, but now they're all grown up. Before I was captured by the first Hokage, I was expecting grandchildren. Naruto's thoughts were racing. So you weren't causing chaotic destruction? I caused a lot of destruction to you humans. However, I never did it without reason. I killed to protect my home and the foxes who call it home. All right, that makes sense. If I were in his shoes, I would act similarly. Fine, I agree to your deal, but you have to promise to leave the leaf alone when you leave. Not a scratch. After squinting, the Kyuubi nodded. All right, brat, you've got yourself a deal. Now I would suggest checking up on your teammates. While I hate the Uchiha, I have made an exception for Sasuke Uchiha, and am willing to help him. Now, the curse mark that the snake bastard left on him needs to be sealed. You don't have the knowledge to remove the mark, so you'll have to suppress it for now. Also, my name is Kurama. Know that it is a rare thing for a tailed beast to give its name to a human. Don't make me regret it, the Kyuubi said as Naruto nodded his head in understanding and turned to go. Out of instinct, Naruto gave a small salute and vanished from his subconscious. That boy has come a long way, Kushina. I had my doubts, but I truly believe he'll be able to keep the promise that you couldn't. After searching for 30 minutes, Naruto found Kakashi and persuaded his sensei that he could give Sasuke the seal he needed to suppress his curse mark. Despite their skepticism, Kakashi was aware that Naruto was their best option and currently knew more about Fuinjutsu than anyone else. Although he was somewhat knowledgeable, Kakashi acknowledged that he was far behind Naruto after seeing some of what he had studied. Kakashi led Naruto to a side door in the lengthy concrete corridor once they arrived at the basement. Naruto opened the door to find Sasuke lying on a prisoner's bed. Sasuke was shocked and relieved to see Naruto when he looked up at the sound of the dew. What are you doing here? I thought no one was allowed to see me until the second exam ended? That is what we said. I was going to try and seal your curse mark this afternoon. We had to wait so we could prepare the room. However, Naruto came to me with knowledge of what you needed and offered his assistance, so I thought it'd be better if he placed the seal on you. In relief that he was no longer alone, Sasuke nodded. Kakashi, the room is prepped, please proceed with the sealing immediately, said Akunoichi who had appeared in the doorway. Kakashi gestured for Naruto and Sasuke to follow after giving a nod of comprehension. There were sealing signs all over the room he led them to. In the center was a metal chair, and beside it was sealing ink. All right. Sasuke, take your shirt off so we can place more sealing marks on your skin, and Naruto make sure everything is in line with the already made sealing marks around the room and then finish the seal. With a nod, the two left to carry out their duties in silence. Naruto is taking a few minutes, while Sasuke is only taking a few seconds. He started painting more sealing marks on Sasuke after Naruto gave his final approval. Naruto recognized the seal because he had read nearly all of the library's sealing books. Naruto got up and gave Kakashi the brush and ink after they had been painting for 30 minutes. With a "this is going to hurt" expression, Naruto placed his hand on the curse mark and sealed it. Sasuke's senses were overwhelmed with pain before he could respond. It was as though he was engulfed in flames and dissolving from the inside out. Although the curse mark was correctly sealed and Sasuke was unharmed, the pain became so intense that he eventually passed out. Naruto and Kakashi pulled Sasuke's arms over their shoulders and pulled him back to the room where Team 7 was staying so he could sleep in a more comfortable setting. Kakashi thanked Naruto for his assistance, set Sasuke down, and then said he had some more work to do before leaving. Naruto made the decision to sleep. He didn't want to add to the already overwhelming amount of events that day. Naruto fell asleep in 3 minutes and would remain asleep despite Hinata's noise when she got back and when she was getting ready for bed. He went to bed at around 3 p.m., so it was a record for him to not wake up until 7 a.m. the next day. The day before. He woke up groggily and went to shower. Unfortunately, he entered the room as Hinata was exiting the shower with a towel wrapped around herself because he was too exhausted to realize that there were other people in the room. Hinata was so terrified that her face flushed. With a quick apology, Naruto froze, slammed the door, and began to pray to Kami that Hinata hadn't killed him. Hinata was too ashamed to be upset with Naruto, which was fortunate for him, and the morning continued in an awkward tension between them. A tension that, upon awakening, left Sasuke completely bewildered. Fortunately, Naruto and Hinata were summoned to a meeting, and they hoped that this would allow them to divert their attention and forget about the encounter. The Hokage and a sickly-looking man stood in front of the large rectangle that contained all of the genin teams that had advanced past the second. Their senseis stood on balconies on the sides of the room. Congratulations on passing the second exam. You all have risked so much to make it to this point. Unfortunately, that will not be enough to participate in the third exam. Due to so many of you passing, we will be holding preliminary matches for the third exam. The proctor, Hayate Gecko, will explain how these matches will be conducted and then we will begin. Hayate began, more accurately, went into a coughing fit, before the genin could even talk among themselves, leaving them too preoccupied to discuss anything else. After he had finished, Hayate turned to the genin and in an exhausted and sickly voice said, "All right, the matches will be one-on-one. The victor will proceed to the third exam and the loser fails the exam. Now, matches will be held one at a time. Your name and your opponent's name will appear on the board before you fight. You are allowed to forfeit the match whenever you choose. Killing isn't prohibited, however it is not encouraged, and when I say the match is over, the match is over. Cough, cough, act, now go wait with your senseis for your match to begin." Excuse me, sir, I do not wish to continue with the exam. The entire room was now staring at Kabuto after he raised his hand. Unconcerned, Hayate let him go and went to the corner to clear his throat once more. That doesn't make sense at all. This is his chance to finally pass the test after failing it multiple times, and he gives it up. His plans don't seem to be in the best interests of the Leaf, in my opinion. Before arriving, Naruto created a clone and had it conceal itself. Naruto believed that the meeting was merely for informational purposes and that he might be able to recall more of it if he had two of them. He had the clone conceal itself because, of course, he didn't want his teammates making fun of him for it. Naruto watched Kabuto leave the room, gesturing to his clone. Memories of the clone were flooded into Naruto a few seconds later, alerting him to the placement of the tracking seal. Kabuto left the room, and the genin teams scattered in unison. Team 7 got a clear view of who had passed by sending each team to their sensei. Team Guy, the other members of the Konohamaru, and the Sand team with Gaara had all passed. The girl and mother sealed well, but one of them had a limping arm. The Hidden Sound team had also passed. Because Sasuke crashed him into a tree, I suppose. Although they didn't seem to have a sensei with them, the final two members of Kabuto's team were also present. The team from Hidden Rain that had attacked them earlier was also present, but it appeared that their sole objective was to get revenge on Team 7. As the first names were set to appear on the enormous television mounted on the wall, the room held its breath. Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato. With a sly smile, Sasuke headed to the bottom floor, while his opponent followed suit, covering his face with a cloth. Hayate started the match after determining that both opponents were prepared. Neither team moved for the first minute. With electricity pulsing between his fingers, Sasuke chose to initiate contact and executed his paralysis jutsu. Sasuke simultaneously made a charge for Yoroi and broke the weight seal. Yoroi's speed impressed many genins, but he was able to dodge and grab Sasuke by the arms instead of the hands. Then Sasuke sensed his chakra being drained from him as a blue glow encircled Yoroi's own hands. He acted quickly, leapt, and released his arms from Yoroi's hold. Through his shaded black eyes, Yoroi's smirk was visible. With a frown, Sasuke triggered his Sharingan. He sent a fireball in Yoroi's direction while making quick hand gestures, and Yoroi quickly put on gloves and drank the chakra from the fireball. In an attempt to divert Yoroi's attention with another fireball, Sasuke was nearly hit by the older genin's fireball. Sasuke's shirt was singed as he sped forward, barely avoiding the fireball as adrenaline kicked in. Sasuke grimaced and attempted to maintain pressure with a leg sweep, but Yoroi effortlessly sidestepped every blow and proceeded to drain Sasuke's chakra in the process. Sasuke jumped backwards to gather himself, realizing he was not making any progress. I'm running low on energy. I suppose I'll have to wrap this up quickly. Sasuke assumed his fighting stance and began to channel lightning chakra throughout his body. As the energy surged through his veins, he occasionally shook. You're weak. I can't believe you're Itachi's younger brother. Is the oh-so-great Uchiha getting scared? Have you ever been in an actual fight before, pretty boy? Or have people set it up so you'd win no matter what? You're weak. Yoroi was unable to complete his taunt before Sasuke launched himself towards him and struck the boy in the stomach, knocking out the chakra stealer. They were shocked, the Chunin. Few genin were aware that using lightning chakra could speed one up, and even fewer were able to do it. Hayate declared Sasuke the winner and Yoroi incapable of continuing. When Sasuke returned to his team, his classmates congratulated him profusely, and Ino even attempted to give him a hug. However, he was taken aback when Sakura simply said, "Congrats," and turned to leave. When did this occur? I'm glad it happened, but why didn't she hold on to me like she always does? Sasuke, who doesn't like to think about things that aren't his business, dismissed it, but Ino didn't and had mentally noted that she should check in on her friend after the preliminary round. Everyone's attention was focused on the television as it began to flash through names once more. Zaku Abumi vs Shino Aburame. Each of the two fighters went to the lowest level and prepared for battle. Both vowed to emerge victorious. Hash 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 hash. Naruto's name appeared beside one of the rain ninjas after Shikamaru had returned from his battle with the Hidden Sound Girl. With a smile on his face, Naruto walked to the lower level, eager to get started. The Rain Nin was warned to get ready to die, Leaf Nin, but Naruto simply grinned and ignored the threat without making an effort. Hayate shouted, "Begin," as she turned her gaze from Naruto to the Rain Nin. First to act, the rain nin melted into the ground and vanished from view. With a laugh, Naruto leapt into the air and created a dozen clones. With so many targets, the rain nin couldn't act alone without being attacked by the others. That is, until the rain descended from the earth, causing a ring of spikes to emerge around him, skewering everything in its path. As the clones poofed into the smoke, the rain nin grinned. He anticipated seeing blood trickle down the spike's points as he turned to face the final one. Rather, a puff of smoke and a foxy smile welcomed him. The rain genin was slammed into the ground with bone-crushing force after Naruto took advantage of the situation and launched himself from the ceiling where he was hiding. After leaving the crater, Naruto waited for Hayate to declare him the winner. A large number of his classmates were stunned. Naruto did that. They were contemplating. Many only saw him as weak and a failure. Even his so-called friends felt insulted by his easy victory over such a formidable foe. This was a huge surprise because they had never seen his strength before. When Naruto returned to the balcony, his friends praised his newfound strength and gave him several pats on the back. Although they had witnessed him during the capture the flag exercise, they were surprised to see him defeat another formidable genin with such ease. Neji then faced off against another rain genin, but the fight was far too lackluster. The match ended in the first 30 seconds, with Neji emerging victorious and unharmed. Many people started to perspire as Lee and Guy Sensei, yes, I'm fixing it, raved about how young and powerful Neji is. Neji was saved, but Tenten was still healing from her altercation with Temari when she arrived to offer him a brief smile and simple congratulations. Neji's blush was almost imperceptible. When Hinata saw it, she lifted the corner of her lip in joy for her cousin. Rock Lee vs. Gaara. Lee was thrilled to be in the ring at last, and Gaara's expression of boredom nearly overcame Lee's enthusiasm, setting a new record. After Hayate started the match by checking both opponents, mayhem broke out. Watch the amazing battle on YouTube, it's far superior to what I could write. Following the fight between Lee and Gaara, concerned about the boy and not considering her appearance, Sakura had departed with Lee. This particularly piqued Ino's interest, and she mentally cleared her schedule for tomorrow. Next up against the last Sand Genin was Choji. Choji was in agony and self-disgust after the lackluster battle. The sound of Genin's gauntlet was all that many Chunin were interested in, but they soon figured out how it worked. A rain genin also confronted Hinata. This was the one who had initially come into contact with Team 7 and appeared to harbor a special animosity toward her. That blonde idiot was surprising, but you'll find I'm much more dangerous one-on-one. He then sank into the ground after launching multiple water needles in Hinata's direction. With ease, Hinata dodged the needles before striking the ground with her Byakugan. The rain nin landed roughly on the ground after being flung out of it. He launched several water attacks in an attempt to recover. With a menacing smile, Hinata gestured a few times before draining the water from his attacks and launching a series of lightning-fast water bullets. He was rendered incapacitated when the bullets struck his thighs and shoulders. No, I will not be beaten by filth like you. You have your pampered life without any real experience of the world. I've seen war and death, and more horrors than you can imagine. He began making hand signals as he struggled to stand. I hate those with keke genke, and I make sure one is removed by the end of the day. Water bomb jutsu. In front of him, water from his body and all the earlier attacks condensed. Then he threw it at Hinata, sending a sphere of devastation flying in her direction. Anything in its path was shredded as it burst into violent waves. Out of instinct, Hinata's eyes widened and launched an attack. The water began to dance around Hinata, barely avoiding her. Her eyes were closed as her hands reached for the chakra in the water. With controlled anger and a vow of pain, she greeted the rain genin by making fists and opening her eyes. The rain genin was washed away and the match was won when the water rushed towards him after creating a tidal wave behind her. Without saying anything, Hinata left and went to the balcony to join her teammates. As she walked back, everyone fell silent. A fearsome aura emanated from the Sound Sensei's ravenous gaze. Making sure to make eye contact, Naruto let out some of the hurt and rage he had been holding inside his entire life. The Sound Sensei was the only one who had noticed, and he stopped eyeing Hinata, apparently taken aback by the emotion in Naruto's eyes. Kiba's question, "Hey, I didn't fight. Does that mean I win or lose?" relieved the tension that had built up. Hayate was grateful for the diversion. The television rumbled through the names, landing on Naruto and Kiba. Naruto grinned. "Okay, Kiba. I face you." Kiba grinned and leapt into the ring, ready to go. Cough, cough, ack. Cough, you will fight someone, but they will fight twice. If they lose, but they are allowed to so they don't wish to compete and we'll go to the next person. Begin. Kiba and Akamaru immediately launched into their fang over fang technique, preventing Naruto from properly preparing anything. He had to unseal a portion of his weights to dodge, only receiving minor scratches. 5 more Narutos appeared after making a few hand signals. Are you already feeling worn out? When they destroyed a clone, however, it burst into a cloud of electricity and paralyzed both Kiba and Akamaru. That's a new one. Kiba managed to escape, and Hayate declared Naruto the victor after smirking and charging, while Kiba shrugged and performed another fang over fang. Since many of the Chunin had never seen such a jutsu before and had assumed that Kakashi had taught him, they were impressed by Naruto and made some ordinary clones before carrying Kiba and Akamura to the balcony. It wasn't until later that they realized Naruto was the creator and were truly in awe. Gaara's bloodlust increased, and his team began to fear for their lives. The Hokage turned to the new genin and grinned, saying, "Congratulations to all of you, win or lose, you demonstrated your power to us all." He had never witnessed such a display of power at such an event, and he said, "This is history in the making. We will now take a month off prior to the 3rd exam. Take advantage of this time to rest, prepare for your opponent, and train. Please feel free to use one of our training fields if you are traveling from your home village." After saying, "We'll see how well you can adjust to your opponents," Hiruzen turned and left the genin to depart the tower and return to the village. Naruto approached Hinata as they were walking and said, "Hey, how did you manage the water in that manner? It was incredible. I don't know, I just let my body go and that happened." Hinata managed to contain her blush this time as she absorbed his compliment and responded as honestly as she could at the time. She felt as though she had transformed into the water, acting as both a puppet and a puppeteer. Naruto was astounded by what both Hinata and Sasuke had accomplished, both of them using their elemental natures in cool and powerful ways. "I guess I know what I'm going to be working on this month," Naruto said, grinning as he considered all the possibilities that the upcoming month held. It was awesome to watch, and a lot more entertaining to watch compared to Neji's fight. While Naruto was deep in contemplation, Hinata recalled that the elders would schedule a demanding training schedule for her in the coming month, which would leave little time for her to spend with her team. Knowing that she would be granted a day of rest at the very least tomorrow, Hinata plucked up the courage to ask, "Naruto, would you be able to entertain a visit from me tomorrow?" Hinata's face was flushed, and it only got worse when Naruto needed a few seconds to figure out what she was talking about. "Sure, I can make you those pancakes and then you can show me flower pressing," Naruto said with a smile after resolving the fancier language puzzle. Hinata allowed a tiny smile to appear, which, regrettably for her, Neji had noticed. A smile among Hyugas had significant ramifications for the circumstances in which it occurred, so Neji made it his new goal to discover why this one had occurred. The next morning, "You seem awfully happy this morning. Is it because of that Hyuga vixen?" Naruto had discovered the night before that Kurama was able to speak to him while he was awake and was still getting used to the idea of having 2 voices in his head. "No, well, yes. But not like that. She's one of my few friends. This is just me paying a debt and also learning a new skill, that's all." Kurama remained doubtful, but let the topic drop for the time being. In an attempt to calm himself, Naruto took a deep breath. "She's coming up the stairs, Kit," he said, taking one last glance around the apartment to make sure he and his clones hadn't forgotten anything. Knock, knock, knock. Naruto opened the door and smiled when he saw his friend. "Hello, Hinata. Does Ko not accompany you today?" Hinata eked at this. In fact, she had cloned herself and abandoned Ko because, for whatever reason, she simply couldn't bear the idea of Ko keeping watch over her and Naruto, so she took action to prevent it. The worst lie she had ever told was probably, "Oh, he had some clan work to do, so I was allowed to be on my own today." Naruto also thought it was pretty bad, but he didn't complain, instead using his years of acting experience to play dumb. "Well, that is regrettable. Anyway, feel free to make yourself at home in the interim as I haven't started making the pancakes yet." Naruto reflected, not that anyone would want this hellhole as a home. After Hinata entered and settled into Naruto's shabby yet cozy living quarters, Naruto thought, "Hey, let me demonstrate how to make them." All Hinata could say was, "Huh." Before escorting her to the tiny kitchen area, Naruto quickly gathered all the necessary supplies and tools in front of them. "All right. Let's get started." The two made the pancake batter together, slowing down for Hinata. Because the counter was so small, they were shoulder to shoulder the entire time, something they were both very aware of. Huh. This could be from a romance novel. Naruto became agitated at this and shook his head in an attempt to purge his mind of any unclean thoughts. We're just two friends making pancakes together. Nothing more. This chant worked, but he had to repeat it to himself several times. I don't know what is happening to me, but I just can't seem to breathe right when I'm that close to him. Since Naruto had no spatulas and had always flipped the pancake in the air, he decided it would be best if he cooked the first few to show Hinata how to do it. Hinata used the increased space to create a small gap between them in an attempt to keep herself from getting any more flustered. I don't know what is happening to me, but I just can't seem to breathe right when I'm that close to him. When Naruto's density struck, Hinata's breath was interrupted. How about you try it? Leaving the stove for Hinata, Naruto watched as she approached, unsure about her ability to complete her objective. After pouring the batter on, she waited for the bubbles to rise, acutely aware of Naruto watching her. When the pancake was ready, she took the pan handle and brought the pan off the stove, dipping it low. Then she flicked the pan up to try and flip the pancake, but it resulted in a disk of batter on the ceiling. Naruto seemed indifferent to the spectacle. Huh, and I thought only I could do that. This time, how about I assist you in flipping it? She agreed, but Hinata had another pancake ready to flip, so she repeated the process, and Naruto came up behind her and put his hands over hers. Her face flushed, and she was unable to comprehend what was happening because Naruto had become so focused on the task at hand that he had missed the scene. Naruto gently guided her hand, and this time, Hinata successfully flipped the pancake and put the pan back on the stove. There we have it. You performed admirably. He's so close I could kiss him, Hinata thought, before falling like a rag doll after making the error of glancing back to see how close her and Naruto's faces were. After shutting off the stove, Naruto checked on Hinata, knowing that she would feel more at ease on the couch. At first, he thought she might be sick or had been poisoned, but after he had run a number of tests to rule out all of these possibilities, he sighed with relief. Kurama was laughing at Hinata, and Naruto decided to give him a piece of his mind for it. You see, for the first time in her life, Hinata fainted over a boy.
I will continue this story next part. Till then, we weeb offline.